Chapter 621, The Disappeared Auror and a Remedial Lesson at Hogwarts. John glanced at the owl perched across the table, then watched Basil stride over, nonchalantly stepping on Crabbe's hands and feet along the way. "Have you noticed the owls seem increasingly intimidated by him?" Malfoy remarked, always feeling that this particular owl exuded an aura more domineering than his own. John remained silent, observing as Basil approached the owl delivering the newspaper. A mere upward glance from Basil was enough to send the owl into a panic, causing it to drop the newspaper and flee, even colliding with the glass in its haste. Basil nonchalantly picked up the newspaper, casually stepping on Goyle's hand as he returned to deliver the newspaper to John. Malfoy attempted to feed Basil some bacon, only to receive a disdainful look from the bird before it turned its head to accept a gentle pat from Astoria. "I won't tolerate anyone more arrogant than me at Hogwarts," Malfoy declared, his fury palpable. Moments later, he appeared lost in thought, his hair disheveled. "Is that owl really just an owl, John?" Malfoy inquired, puzzled by his own question. John, ignoring Malfoy's odd behavior, focused on the newspaper's headlines. A saint breaking into the Ministry of Magic? He felt skeptical about the authenticity of the news. After perusing several newspapers, John set aside the last one, which discussed the upcoming election, just as Riddle arrived, delivering a letter from Tangmi. "I need to step out for a bit," John announced to Malfoy before departing, leaving Daphne watching his retreating figure with concern in her gray-blue eyes. In a deserted corridor, John opened the letter, revealing several photographs. "Rippy Kerber," he murmured, recognizing the significance of the discovery. He must have found something crucial to risk breaking into the Ministry of Magic and becoming a target. After burning the letter, John reflected on his impression of Lippy, a clever individual who had played a significant role in altering Barty Jr.'s identity and had contributed greatly to their operations. "Someone needs to go to Poland," John concluded, acknowledging the gravity of the situation. In Poland, a group of Aurors entered the country covertly, immediately commencing their investigation with the expertise to trace magical activities. The Polish Ministry of Magic was unusually quiet following the destruction of a lift shaft. "Our objective is to locate Rippy Kerber," the lead Auror instructed, emphasizing the need for discretion due to their illegal entry. The team, consisting of 5 Aurors, first visited Lippy's last known location, a hotel, where they learned from the owner that Lippy had not returned since the previous day. The weight of their mission felt heavier as they split up to gather more clues, unaware that they were being watched. A week after the invasion of the Polish Ministry of Magic, the Quidditch match between Slytherin and Hufflepuff saw Malfoy and Astoria dominate, putting Slytherin 250 points ahead of Hufflepuff. This defeat was particularly demoralizing for Hufflepuff, having already suffered a 200-point loss to Gryffindor. The matchups were notable, with Ginny and Harry for Gryffindor and Astoria and Malfoy for Slytherin, each pair comprising a chaser and a seeker supported by their firebolts, which became the envy of other houses. Meanwhile, Gryffindor was gearing up for their next match against Ravenclaw, determined to maintain their competitive edge. As the next holiday approached, signaling the imminent arrival of exams, the students at Hogwarts were reminded to cherish their last vacation. Pansy Parkinson, who had recently grown closer to Daphne Greengrass, seemed out of character for someone typically preoccupied with romance. This change was primarily due to Theodore Knott's abrupt departure from school, spurred by news of his father's troubles in Azkaban. Pansy was deeply concerned, feeling helpless about the situation. Meanwhile, Draco Malfoy was at his wits' end, struggling with the incompetence of Gregory Goyle and Vincent Crabbe. Their constant challenges to his patience were likened to dealing with 2 colossal fools. Malfoy's threats of expulsion from the Quidditch team if they failed their exams were taken seriously, especially since Professor Snape had expressed his intolerance for such foolishness within Slytherin House. With Theodore gone, the responsibility of educating these 2 had unfortunately fallen to Malfoy. On the other side of the spectrum, the Gryffindor house was buzzing with excitement over their upcoming lessons. Ron Weasley was astonished to learn that Dumbledore himself was involved in their training. Hermione Granger quickly shushed him, urging discretion. The revelation that Sirius Black was also involved piqued their curiosity further, especially when Harry Potter mentioned that their training was related to concerns that Gellert Grindelwald might still be alive, despite widespread belief to the contrary. Hermione was skeptical, citing recent newspaper reports as evidence of Grindelwald's death. However, Harry countered by highlighting the unreliability of the press, drawing from his own experiences of being misrepresented. The conversation then shifted to their training, with Ron expressing envy over Harry's lessons with Dumbledore, only to sympathize when Snape's involvement in teaching occlumency was mentioned. Amidst these discussions, the focus also turned to the upcoming Quidditch match against Ravenclaw. With Katie Bell's departure, Ron had taken up the position of chaser, and the team was determined to win the championship. Their spirits were high following a victory against Hufflepuff, and they were keen on maintaining their momentum. As they were talking, an owl delivered a newspaper, which Hermione picked up. The headline read, "5 Aurors Missing," featuring a grim photo of Barty Crouch Sr. The disappearance of the Aurors sent to Poland was troubling news, highlighting the dangers faced by the Ministry of Magic's combat forces and underscoring the tense atmosphere that surrounded the wizarding world. The loss of 5 had already been a heavy blow, but for Barty Crouch Sr., it was a wake-up call that pushed his vigilance against Poland to unprecedented heights. He realized that the situation demanded immediate and decisive action. In the quiet of his office, surrounded by the weight of responsibility and the silent portraits of past officials, Barty Sr. made a pivotal decision. He would no longer sit back and watch as threats loomed on the horizon. It was time to take the fight to the enemy. This decision was not made lightly. Barty Sr. understood the complexities and the potential backlash of his actions, but the stakes were too high to ignore. The safety of the wizarding world hung in the balance, and he was determined to protect it at all costs. He began to outline a strategy, one that would require precision, stealth, and the cooperation of his most trusted allies. Every detail had to be meticulously planned to avoid any leaks or mistakes that could jeopardize the mission. Barty Sr. knew that the element of surprise was crucial in their endeavor against Poland's dark forces. As he set his plan into motion, Barty Sr. felt a mix of determination and apprehension. He was aware of the risks involved, not just to himself, but to all who would join him in this fight. Yet the thought of what could happen if they failed was far more terrifying. The loss of 5 had been a harsh reminder of the enemy's strength, but it also served as a catalyst for change. Barty Sr.'s resolve hardened. He would do whatever it took to ensure the safety of the wizarding world. The shadows of the past and the looming threat of the future merged into a single focus for him. This was not just a battle, it was a war, and he was ready to lead the charge. Chapter 622, Old Barty's Grief and Confrontation. British Minister of Magic visits Poland. Barty Crouch Sr. made his way to the Polish Ministry of Magic, choosing to confront the mystery of his disappearing subordinates directly. Upon his arrival, he was warmly welcomed by the Polish Minister of Magic, Inge Griffiths, a gesture that was well received by the Polish wizarding community. As Barty re-entered Poland, the smiles on the faces of the Polish wizards made him contemplative. "Can a person really change?" he mused aloud to his companion, Pierce. Pierce, ever the pragmatist, replied, "My lord, they are merely embers flickering out." Indeed, despite the outward appearances, the specter of fanaticism did little to alleviate the tangible issues of hunger and poverty that still plagued the area. It was a despair not born from the lack of food, but from the inability to envision a hopeful future. Barty's gaze fell upon a collapsed building. Approaching it, he lifted a stone slab, noting the absence of bodies beneath. It was then that Star Rosier and his entourage arrived to greet him. "Welcome to Poland," Star said, his voice devoid of warmth as he glanced at the ruins. "There are always those who seek to harm our savior." Barty paused, then replied evenly, "I hope our discussions with your ministry will be fruitful." "Of course," Star assured him with a smile. "Your safety is our priority." With a nod, Barty proceeded towards the Ministry of Magic. Inside the ministry, Minister Griffiths was nonchalantly levitating a corpse, remarking, "Dead," as Barty entered. The sight of the floating body caused Barty's pupils to constrict in shock. Ah, Minister Crouch, Griffiths greeted, turning to face him. You are most welcome here. I trust you will find our facility satisfactory. Barty, however, was fixated on the corpse behind Griffiths, momentarily unable to respond. Pierce quickly intervened, explaining, Apologies, our leader is quite fatigued. Griffiths, unfazed, responded with elegance. I was remiss. Please, Minister Crouch, feel free to rest in my office. Our ministry was recently attacked, hence the presence of this intruder's body. As Griffiths stepped aside, revealing the corpse marked by burns and bloodstains, Barty approached for a closer look. Lippy? He whispered, recognizing the clothing despite the disfigurement caused by fire and crushing debris. It was indeed Lippy, one of his missing subordinates. Turning back to Griffiths, who still wore a smile, Barty expressed a desire to discuss further matters concerning Griffiths' department. Of course, Griffiths agreed, as Star waved his wand, causing Lippy's body to float away, nameless and forgotten. Pierce, Barty called out, signaling his intent to delve deeper into the ministry's affairs. Griffiths, showing no sign of concern, granted permission for Pierce to explore the ministry further. As Barty was escorted to the minister's office, he couldn't help but notice a painting of a windmill on the wall. Griffiths, sensing Barty's observation, explained, Due to Grindelwald, many seek my life. I must remain vigilant. I understand, Barty replied, his heart heavy with grief, yet determined to remain composed in the face of the enigmatic Minister Griffiths. Actually, I owe you an apology, Barty began, addressing the aftermath of Grindelwald's influence. The International Federation of Wizards had supported your department, but the follow-up was rushed, leaving some staff unaccounted for. Griffiths raised an eyebrow, intrigued. So there are others here? Yes, Barty confirmed gravely. 6 Aurors in total. I believe they have not caused any trouble for Minister Griffiths. No trouble at all, Griffith replied with a smile. It's just that I'm uncertain of the whereabouts of those 6 individuals. He paused, his expression turning serious. The recent appearances of what are being called Grindelwald's remnants have put the Ministry of Magic on high alert. Grindelwald's remnants? Could they be Aurors from the Ministry? This situation was largely Barty Crouch Sr.'s doing. He understood that the opposition wouldn't relent without gaining some advantage. Moreover, the bodies displayed by the opposition today were clearly meant as a bargaining chip with Crouch. I've been made aware of the damage to your ministry, Crouch Sr. mentioned. I happen to know a generous individual who owns a silver-handled fashion establishment, and I believe he could be of assistance to Minister Griffith. He was prepared to negotiate, fixing his gaze on Griffith as he continued. As the Minister of Magic, I'm sure Minister Griffith might have some information regarding my associates. After a moment of contemplation, Griffith responded, I just recalled, someone did report encountering some strangers in a certain location. How many? Crouch Sr. inquired. 5, Griffith replied with a smile. 5 strangers, who I believe are still there. Crouch Sr. took a deep breath, about to mention the 6th person, but Griffith cut him off. I trust my subordinate's report. The exchange was calm, devoid of any conflict. Crouch Sr. gave Griffith a meaningful look. It seems my associates might have run into some of Grindelwald's remnants. With that, he left the ministry to investigate the location Griffith had mentioned, only to find Aurors with their memories erased. None of the 5 remembered why they were in Poland. Crouch Sr., as investigation in Poland was brief. Upon his return, Pierce emerged from the ministry with disappointing news. Nothing, he said, shaking his head. Crouch Sr.'s expression darkened. Had Lippy died in vain? Pierce added, There is one thing, though. I'm convinced Lippy found something significant. Witnesses mentioned he dropped something from his pocket and risked capture to retrieve it. It must have been crucial, or Lippy wouldn't have risked going back for it. However, upon examining Lippy's body, Pierce found nothing noteworthy. Witnesses described the item as a ring. Crouch Sr. realized that Lippy's death was connected to that ring. Was it taken, or had Lippy hidden it somewhere? Griffith's enigmatic smile haunted Crouch Sr., making it clear that he couldn't keep putting his people in danger. I must seek help elsewhere, he concluded, thinking of John. No one but the so-called Second King could assist him now. Griffith's ability to subdue 5 Aurors with ease indicated formidable strength. Unable to openly deploy aurors, Crouch Senior's only hope lay with John. Griffith hasn't found it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left the body, Crouch Senior mused, sensing that the item was also of great importance to Griffith. What secrets lay behind the man who defeated Grindelwald? Meanwhile, in the wizarding enclave of Poland, a hooded figure approached the site of a collapsed building. He scanned the area, aware of the watchful eyes upon him. Realizing it was safer to withdraw, he left the scene. As he departed, a voice from the shadows commanded, "Keep searching. That man must have hidden something here." As the search resumed, the hooded figure observed from a distance, silently monitoring every move. Chapter 623, Building Momentum with a Financial Offensive. The Minister of Magic's visit to Poland, marked by friendly interactions with the Polish Minister of Magic, left many pondering the dynamics of their meeting. "I can't see through that person," Batty Sr. confided to John during their discussion at Silverhand Manor. Accompanied by Pierce, old Batty's arrival was significant. John, with his slender fingers thoughtfully stroking a ring, listened intently. "I'm certain Lippy stumbled upon something crucial, prompting them to silence it immediately," Batty Sr. revealed. "I need your assistance to uncover what was found in Poland." Upon hearing this, John ceased his contemplative gesture. His gaze shifted to Tang Mi, a loyal follower since the inception of Silver Hand, who was struggling with the loss of a close friend. Tang Mi, driven by a mix of grief and determination, volunteered, "My lord, I'll go. I can find it." However, John, understanding the depth of Tang Mi's emotions, responded, "No, you can't. Your anger could lead to self-destruction and attract unwanted trouble." He pointed out that Tang Mi's well-known association with Johnny Silverhand and his recognizable presence made him unsuitable for undercover tasks. Despite Tang Mi's silence, reflecting his inner turmoil, John offered an alternative approach. "I will send you to Poland, but not on a mission," John declared, proposing a strategy to leverage goodwill. "Since he uses his people as his advantage, we'll extend our help to them." "The third branch of Johnny Silverhands will open in Poland," John announced, confident that such a gesture of support would be welcomed. Old Batty chuckled, appreciating the cleverness of entering Poland under the guise of assistance, bypassing any resistance from the Polish Ministry of Magic. John, with a strategic mindset, suggested, "I think we need a press conference." He acknowledged the influence of Minister Crouch's advice in shaping his approach to building momentum. The plan was to highlight the economic benefits of Silverhand's expansion into Poland, showcasing it as a significant favor to the Polish community, regardless of the Polish Minister of Magic's stance. This move demonstrated the power of financial influence in gaining positive recognition. At the press conference the following day, Silverhand announced its expansion into Poland, including efforts to assist in reconstruction and support for Polish wizarding children's education. This initiative shifted the international magic community's focus and garnered praise for Barty Crouch's role in facilitating the collaboration. Under John's guidance, Rita Skeeter, now editor-in-chief of the Daily Prophet, was instrumental in publicizing old Barty's contributions. The narrative aimed to remind everyone of Barty Crouch's legacy as a distinguished minister of magic, not overshadowed by other heroes who fought against the Dark Lord. The coverage included various features. Generous funding. Barty Crouch joined Silverhands to support Poland, highlighted Crouch's impactful career. Interviews and articles celebrated Crouch's wisdom and the legendary collaboration between Silverhand and Crouch. Expert analyses explored the sociological effects of Silverhand's assistance to the Polish Ministry of Magic. This strategic media campaign not only bolstered John and Silverhand's image, but also reinforced Barty Crouch's legacy, demonstrating the multifaceted benefits of leveraging financial power for positive influence and recognition in the wizarding world. Magic rebuilt for free, and Gringotts goblins, there are more silver-handed galleons than Gringotts, were the topics that seemed to dominate conversations worldwide. The first topic celebrated the achievements of the current Minister of Magic, often hailed as the most successful in a century. The second topic, however, was centered around the wealth of Johnny Silverhand. Upon reading this, John set aside the newspaper, only to catch Malfoy's inquisitive look. "John, is it true what my father says? That your wealth could fill Nocturne Alley?" Malfoy asked, his curiosity piqued. Despite his family's wealth, none of them could boast of having enough money to fill Nocturne Alley. While Nocturne Alley was smaller than Diagon Alley, it was still a significant area. John, finding the question somewhat amusing yet pointless, replied, "Why does that matter to you? As long as I have enough, that's all that matters." "So you're saying it's true?" Malfoy pressed. Not easily dissuaded, John sighed. "Don't believe everything you hear." Malfoy looked skeptical, considering he had heard the rumor from his father. But John's dismissal of the rumor as false seemed to settle the matter for now. As John took a bite of his meal, savoring the magic-infused meat, he thought to himself, "In reality, my wealth could fill 2 alleys." The Silverhand enterprise was a veritable money-making machine. Its contracts with various ministries of magic and its diverse subsidiary industries ensured a steady increase in profits. The Weasley twins' joke shop, having found its footing, was expanding with a new branch in Hogsmeade, and their products were gaining international acclaim. Then there was Lockhart, a wizard whose knack for making money was unparalleled. If the wizarding world had a Forbes list, Lockhart would undoubtedly rank in the top 10. Lockhart, ever the charmer, had a unique way of dealing with his overly enthusiastic fans, even those who trespassed on his property. Instead of increasing his security, he welcomed them, signing autographs and engaging in conversations. His popularity only grew, much to his delight. Lockhart's support for the Minister of Magic, Barty Crouch Sr., swayed many of his fans. The international magical community lauded Crouch Sr.'s decision to aid Poland, seeing it as a wise and generous move. However, not everyone was pleased. John stumbled upon an article in a lesser-known newspaper criticizing Crouch Sr. for allocating resources to foreign aid while neglecting domestic poverty. The article also targeted John, accusing him of hoarding his wealth and colluding with the Minister of Magic. Amused and intrigued by the criticism, John wrote to Tang Mi, asking him to purchase the newspaper. Within a week, the newspaper had changed its tune, now praising Crouch Sr.'s decision as wise and commendable. Barty Crouch Sr.'s reputation as the most successful Minister of Magic in a century was solidified, with even other ministers of magic commending his generosity and leadership. "I think Minister Crouch is the best minister for magic," Seamus Finnegan exclaimed, a sentiment that resonated with many. His leadership, especially during the tumultuous times at Hogwarts, had earned him widespread respect and admiration. Barty Crouch Sr., descending from the heavens, personally led the team that supported Hogwarts to a hard-fought victory. This act alone was enough to turn the tides of public opinion in favor of Hogwarts, making Barty a celebrated figure. John observed Barty Sr. at Hogwarts, reflecting on the power of information, while Slughorn discussed his teaching career. "The whole country has embraced it," John thought, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. With the right information, one could sculpt a person's image to their liking. Dumbledore was a prime example of this in the past. Even the chief warlock of the International Confederation of Wizards had seen his reputation tarnished under the relentless barrage of information. Switching to Muggle society, the dynamics were different. There, information wasn't monopolized by a few. It was widely accessible through various channels. However, in the magical world, where communication relied on owls and there were only a handful of newspapers, controlling the narrative was much simpler. John had ensured he held the reins, not sparing even the Quibbler from his influence, leaving Xenophilius Lovegood as nothing more than an editor-in-chief presiding over a staff of 20. At the Polish Ministry of Magic, a solitary figure stood on a balcony, overlooking the arrival of wizards in silver-trimmed robes. The game had already begun. John had used his financial resources to pry open Poland's defenses, allowing Barty to snatch victory as if stealing food from the jaws of a shark. This was no longer the Europe of half a century ago. In this era, the battleground was dominated by those who wielded capital. The influence of money had begun to sweep across the magical society, reshaping it in ways never seen before. Chapter 624, Infiltration at the Silverhand Poland Branch. Silverhand has made quite an entrance into the Polish magical society, commanding respect and concessions even from the Polish Ministry of Magic. Their presence is a testament to their power, as they bring economic prosperity wherever they go. compelling the ministry to welcome them with open arms. Upon their arrival, Silverhand hosted a grand reception, offering attractive salaries that had many clamoring for a position within their ranks. It was a clear demonstration of how money could open doors that ideals alone could not. John shared this insight with Ingy Griffith, emphasizing that ideals were insufficient to satisfy hunger. This conversation took place as they prepared to open the third Silverhand branch, a fashion building that would operate with even more autonomy from the Ministry of Magic. Their plans were ambitious, prompting Tang Mi to meet with the Polish Minister of Magic. Tang Mi presented before and after photos of a major project completed by Silverhand, showcasing their transformative work. Griffith, impressed, expressed his complete trust in Silverhand and, more specifically, in Tommy Shelby, acknowledging Tang Mi's choice of host with a hint of intimidation. As a werewolf, Tang Mi sensed danger but maintained his composure, thanking Griffith for the compliment. Griffith, hinting at his desire for certain individuals to be employed at the new branch, summoned Star, who understood the implication. That afternoon, 2 new clerks were hired at the Johnny Silverhand store, aligning with Griffith's wishes. Tang Mi's personal mission was to locate Lippy's magic wand, which had been modified to conceal items within its detachable handle. Knowing Lippy, Tang Mi was convinced that if there were something to hide, it would be within the wand. However, gaining access to the Auror's office, where the wand was likely kept, posed a significant challenge. As Tang Mi passed by the Auror's office, he exchanged a knowing look with Star, acknowledging the difficulty of his task. Despite being tasked with overseeing the branch's decoration, Tang Mi found himself without specific instructions, leaving him to navigate his mission independently. Meanwhile, at Hogwarts, the arrival of the last holiday brought about a display of opulence, with students like Malfoy showcasing Easter eggs adorned with family crests and precious gems. John received 3 Easter eggs from home, each uniquely decorated to represent different family members, accompanied by a letter filled with news and a hint of familial rivalry. The letter revealed plans for a new family venture, sparking a mix of amusement and disdain in John for his father's competitive nature. Amidst these personal and professional intrigues, John continued his observations of the Protos Guardian, a magical creature that thrived on starlight, revealing the complexities of magical life and the intertwining of personal ambitions with the broader magical community. To maintain their potency, the stars, made of pure magic, were not necessarily forbidden to consume. Among the Protoss, these stars were highly sought after. John noticed Hector's keen interest in them when he took the stars away. After consuming the stars, the Protoss could briefly enter a period of heightened power. That day, John didn't need to turn on any lights, as Hector was illuminating the room like a light bulb. It seems that magical creatures have a low resistance to the stars, John mused, observing the 3 bottles of Stellaris in his cabinet. Whether it was a unicorn, the spirit of the Black Lake, or a star spirit guard, they all seemed captivated by the stars. Slughorn sought out John with a piece of good news. Setting an Easter egg aside, he announced, "Your dissertation has been approved. I believe it won't be long before you're notified about receiving the new Order of Merlin." Slughorn had even prepared a space in his office cupboard for the Order of Merlin. He shared the news with John, adding, "I'm hosting a party and thou, got, if you're available." Slughorn rubbed his hands together, slightly embarrassed. Having John at the party would certainly elevate his status, given John's fame. "Of course, if you're busy, you can carry on with your plans," Slughorn quickly added, not wanting John to feel pressured. "It's merely an invitation, after all." John smiled lightly. "I think I'll be free that day." He recognized the value in expanding his network through Slughorn's connections. Slughorn was overjoyed by John's acceptance. Now that Voldemort's reign was over, he no longer had to conduct his gatherings in secrecy. Securing John's attendance was almost as thrilling for him as receiving an honor. The party was set for Saturday night, and Slughorn emphasized that John could arrive at any time, fearing he might not show up. But John had no intention of missing it. He wanted to cherish his final moments at school. Easter brought a 2-week holiday, typically filled with homework, leading most students to stay at Hogwarts. This was particularly true for Malfoy, who rallied the Quidditch team for early morning practices, having secured early access to the pitch through Snape. John observed Malfoy energetically lecturing students bogged down with homework. "I saw her murderous gaze towards Draco in Astoria's eyes," he noted. Malfoy, buoyed by his spirits, overlooked the fact that Astoria, a fifth-year student, was in her busiest year at Hogwarts. She was dragged to practice before even finishing her Transfiguration homework. Blaise wagered with Pansy, "Astoria will definitely break up with Draco this year. 10 galleons. Pansy rolled her eyes and retorted with a sneer, "Make it 20 galleons. Malfoy's preemptive booking of the training venue, though unethical, didn't draw criticism from other houses. In fact, Gryffindor was thankful, as they had a captain with similar ambitions. Harry watched Malfoy strut into the Quidditch pitch, unaware that his team members were relieved to have more time for their homework. Malfoy's rush to train wasn't just about avoiding disgrace in Slytherin. It was crucial for preparing the next generation of players. With few 7th graders in Gryffindor and a majority in Slytherin, the future of Slytherin's team was at stake. Thus, a significant portion of Malfoy's training focused on grooming these second-generation players, much to everyone's relief. Astoria, the presumed next captain, had the task of integrating these new team members, leaving her with no time to rest. After the training session concluded, Malfoy could be seen hastily pursuing Astoria, who in turn stormed off without so much as a backward glance. This interaction caused Blaise to clench his fist in frustration, hidden from view. "He's managed to infuriate the kindest girl in Slytherin," Blaise remarked, prompting those in Slytherin to ponder the extent of Malfoy's provocations. John found the situation amusing, considering Astoria's fiery temperament. He mused that it would be entertaining to witness the drama that was sure to unfold. Contrary to what some might think, it was not Malfoy who had ensnared Astoria, but rather Astoria who had, in a manner of speaking, tamed Malfoy. The members of the Star Club observed with keen interest as Astoria gradually asserted her influence over Malfoy, guiding his actions and decisions with a subtle but firm hand. Chapter 625, Credence's Worries in Saints America. Credence was trapped in a restless sleep, his dreams a tumultuous return to his time with Grindelwald. In the grip of a nightmarish vision, he felt bewitching forces coiling around his neck, threatening to strangle him. "We will not fail, Aurelius," whispered a voice, hauntingly familiar. Aurelius Dumbledore, this was the name Grindelwald had bestowed upon him, marking a pivotal moment in his life when he left Nagini's side, armed with newfound knowledge of his lineage and a magic wand in hand. The voice in his dream carried an unsettling confidence, as if failure was an alien concept to it, despite the ominous premonitions of the future. Grindelwald, with his dark magic, had manipulated the death of unicorns to consolidate power during the International Wizarding Union election in Bhutan. He had misinterpreted a prophecy from the pool, believing the brother of the slain Qilin was still alive. A grave error, yet he remained unnervingly composed. "Victory awaits us. It's ours for the taking," he had proclaimed, adding cryptically, "The seeds I have sown are beginning to sprout." These were the last words Credence remembered before he made the decisive break from Grindelwald, puzzled over the metaphorical seeds mentioned. Grindelwald had convinced him that Dumbledore's demise would herald their ultimate victory. However, when faced with Dumbledore, Credence found himself utterly outmatched. It begged the question, how could someone with foresight remain so assured in the face of apparent failure? Credence found no answers, not in life, for he met his end in Godric's Hollow. Had it not been for the necklace John had given him, escape would have been impossible. "The seeds I planted have germinated," he murmured upon waking, drenched in sweat and trying to shake off the remnants of his nightmare. Having a nightmare? Nagini's presence, warm and comforting, dispelled the lingering chill. Credence shook his head, attempting to dismiss his troubled thoughts. "Just memories from the past," he replied. Nagini, ever the comforting figure from their past life together, pressed gently for more. "What's troubling you?" "Grindelwald," Credence confessed, holding her hand for reassurance. "I remembered what he said about the seeds he planted. It worries me. He always spoke in riddles." He trailed off, regretting his fixation on the past. "I'm sorry, Nagini. I think I'm too caught up in what's behind me." No, Credence, Nagini reassured him with a smile. Your past is a part of you. Each night, Credence battled the fear of not waking up, of losing Nagini once more. His pendant, he said, touching his chest, feels alive within me. It's beating, isn't it? Nagini softly observed, her hand over his. Morning broke, signaling the end of their brief respite. It was time for Credence to face the day ahead. Indeed, even someone of Dumbledore's lineage had obligations, finding himself employed at the Silver Hand Johnny branch. Miss Snake, Johnson greeted Nagini with respect, his gaze then shifting to Credence with a hint of melancholy, as if seeing a favored child. Despite his own robust build, Johnson couldn't help but feel overlooked in favor of Credence. Credence, sensing Johnson's mood, whispered to Nagini, "He seems downcast, doesn't he?" Nagini's smile was a balm. "Don't worry about him. The changes in the 13th District staff are minor. Johnson handles security, while Paul oversees sales and negotiations. Your place is at the counter." Paul, catching Credence's attention, offered a piece of advice with a dismissive wave towards Johnson. "Ignore the big guy. He's just envious. You might wonder why you're here, but remember to follow the rules." He handed Credence a monocle, instructing, "First rule, always wear this." As Credence donned the monocle, the mundane counter before him transformed, revealing a world of magic hidden in plain sight. "Oh, Mycar, aye." Paul suddenly remembered an urgent matter in the 7th District that required his attention. He quickly patted Credence on the shoulder and hurried out. Credence turned towards the door, catching Nagini's sympathetic smile at his evident discomfort. "Simplicity has its charms," Credence mused with a smile, watching Paul leave. Just then, his first customer of the day walked in. "What can I help you with?" Credence began, but his voice trailed off as his gaze landed on the visitor's necklace. A peculiar symbol, composed of triangles, circles, and vertical lines, caught his eye. The visitor spoke in a calm tone, "I need the magic wand displayed behind you." Out of the corner of his eye, Credence noticed 3 other individuals, bearing the same symbol as the first. "I'll retrieve it for you," he responded. "Thank you, Aurelius," the visitor said, causing Credence's eyes to widen in shock. He slowly lifted his gaze to meet the visitor's face, which momentarily morphed into Grindelwald's visage in his mind. His pupils dilated in fear. Suddenly, a red light struck the man, and he, along with his companions, collapsed to the ground. Credence traced the source of the light to Nagini, who held a wand in her hand. "They are followers," she explained calmly. Regaining his composure, Credence looked again, and the man's face had reverted to its original form. This wasn't Nagini's first encounter with such a situation. "Johnson, inform the Ministry of Magic. We're closing for the day," she instructed. "Understood, Lady Snake," Johnson replied, as he proceeded to send the incapacitated men to the Ministry of Magic. Meanwhile, John received news of the incident involving the followers at the Silverhand branch. These individuals were not true saints, but rather fervent admirers of Grindelwald. What puzzled John was how they knew Credence's name. Aurelius Dumbledore? He pondered, linking it to Grindelwald. The mystery surrounding Grindelwald deepened. It was clear he was still alive and manipulating events from the shadows. John, along with others including Dumbledore, suspected a connection between Grindelwald and various influential figures, but concrete evidence remained elusive. John's concern grew as he realized that these followers were aware of Credence's awakening. Credence's survival was nothing short of miraculous, having lived through a silent erosion that typically claimed the lives of young wizards. John had used a significant amount of magical power to preserve Credence's life, a process that involved replacing the silent power eroding his body with magical energy, effectively taming it. This process was lengthy and delicate. Credence's premature awakening and his search for Nagini had disrupted John's plans, nearly trapping him in the past due to a missed letter from Dumbledore. Despite his lack of formal magical education, Credence's innate talent and the lessons he learned from Grindelwald allowed him to initially control his powers. However, the strength of his abilities made it difficult to resist the erosion completely. With the weakening of the silent power, Credence's situation began to improve, marking the start of a new chapter in his life, one filled with challenges and the shadow of Grindelwald's influence. Influencing Credence was a given, but this method proved ineffective on Ariana, as she couldn't exert control over Moran. It appears that the solution to our questions resides in Poland, John mused, realizing that the crux of their inquiries now hinged on the Polish Minister of Magic. The truth remained elusive, pending Tangmi's return. John paced the room, his thoughts a whirlwind of possibilities and uncertainties. The connection between the events in Poland and their current predicament was undeniable, yet the specifics eluded him. The Polish Minister of Magic held the key, but without direct information, they were at a standstill. As he waited for Tangmi, John couldn't help but reflect on the complexity of their situation. Credence's susceptibility to influence was a known factor, one they had counted on. However, Ariana's resistance to manipulation, particularly by Moran, introduced an unexpected variable. It underscored the uniqueness of their powers and the limitations of their current strategies. The silence of the room was palpable, filled with the weight of unanswered questions. John knew that patience was necessary, yet the urgency of their mission pressed on him. The stakes were high, and the implications of their actions far-reaching. The balance between waiting for crucial information and the need to act was a delicate one. As the hours passed, John's anticipation grew. Tangmi's return from Poland was not just about obtaining answers. It was about shaping their next move. The information she would bring could potentially alter their understanding of the situation and redefine their approach. The importance of the Polish Minister of Magic in this puzzle was clear. Whatever secrets lay in Poland, they were central to unraveling the mysteries they faced. John understood that the path forward would be challenging, but he also knew that the resolution of these mysteries was essential not just for them, but for the broader magical community. With each passing moment, the anticipation built. The return of Tangmi was more than just a reunion. It was the beacon of hope that they had been waiting for. As John continued to ponder the situation, he prepared himself for the revelations that were to come. The truth was out there, in Poland, and soon they would have the pieces necessary to complete the puzzle. Chapter 626, Second Invasion, Gauss Retires. In the international magical community, Poland has been a hotspot for disasters. First, Grindelwald made his appearance, followed by a physical attack on the Minister of Magic. Then, a group of villains infiltrated the Ministry of Magic. Fortunately, the reconstruction of the ministry was entrusted to the capable hands of Silverhand fashion architecture. However, not long after the commencement of the reconstruction, the ministry faced another invasion. A figure was concealed on the floor of the Department of Magical Sports, clutching a wand and panting heavily. "Earning money has become increasingly difficult," muttered Gauss, taking refuge under a desk as he heard footsteps approaching. "My cunning has saved me once again, though I'm starting to question the Minister of Magic's integrity." Gauss had infiltrated the ministry, disguised as an employee of Silverhand Fashion Building. His plan was to sneak into the Auror's office while everyone was distracted by Tangmi. Everything was proceeding smoothly until he noticed the eye symbol on the door, signaling the presence of Aurors. In a desperate attempt to escape, he blasted a wall and found himself in the labyrinthine corridors of the ministry, which had been extensively modified by Silverhand Fashion Building. Consulting the architectural blueprints he possessed, Gauss located his current position. "I should be in the Ludicrous Products Patent Office. If I head right, there's a staircase with a gap at the last step that isn't covered by anti-apparition spells." With the route memorized and the stolen wand in hand, he pondered, "Is this wand really worth 3,000 galleons?" Despite recognizing the risks, the lucrative offer was too tempting to pass up. "I'll retire after this job," he resolved. As he peeked out from under the desk, a wand was thrust into the office. "Protego!" he exclaimed, casting the shield charm just as an explosion engulfed the room. The desk shattered, propelling him towards the door. An Auror stationed outside was caught off guard by the debris. Star, another Auror, managed to block the attack with a shield charm, only to dodge a killing curse that plunged the area into darkness. Gauss seized the opportunity to escape, sprinting towards the staircase. "Stop him!" Star shouted, illuminating the path with a series of bright flashes. The pursuit was relentless. "I'll need a raise for this," Gauss muttered, narrowly avoiding a killing curse. He conjured a table to shield himself from the attacks, cursing Musashi for his betrayal. Once allies who shared their earnings equally, Musashi had abandoned him for the allure of the Magical Institute in Neon. Blasting the table to pieces, Gauss propelled himself towards the staircase. Permanent sticking charm, he muttered, sealing the door behind him. Confronted with the daunting length of the staircase, he cursed the architect's design. As he ascended, the sound of the Auror's attempts to breach the door echoed behind him. Star, leading the Aurors, commanded, "Blasting curse!" The door, reinforced by Silver Hand to buy time, eventually gave way under the combined force of several Aurors. Gauss, struggling up the staircase, realized his time was running out. With only a dozen steps left, he groaned in frustration, knowing that his pursuit of wealth had led him to this perilous moment. Climbing the last 5 steps, the door burst open. Star, with swift determination, rushed to the stairs and aimed his wand at Gauss, unleashing a spell. Gauss, quick on his feet, ducked to evade the red beam of light and charged forward with all his might. "We must pay more this time," he roared, reaching the final step. Star, caught off guard, was struck by the red light, his wand flying from his grasp. Reacting swiftly, he conjured a silver light with his left hand towards Gauss. Disapparition! In an instant, Gauss vanished. Star, catching his breath, ascended the steps, his gaze fixed on the spot where Gauss had disappeared. "He won't get far. He's wanted," he stated coldly. The Auror following Star was also out of breath, cursing the person who had repaired the stairs countless times in his mind. A single drop of bright red blood remained on that step. Star touched the blood with his wand, a grim reminder of the chase. The arrest warrant was issued promptly. The Polish Ministry of Magic, responsible for the construction of the Silver Hand-style building, faced criticism for a flaw in their design. However, Tang Mi, the head of Silver Hands, openly admitted that the construction was incomplete, intended to be finished that day, had it not been for the intrusion that confined them to the hall, denying them access. Gauss reappeared in an alley frequented by wizards, clutching his chest where a silver dagger was embedded. Blood seeped through his fingers. "I never imagined a single mistake could nearly cost me my life," he mused bitterly, eyeing the wand in his hand before staggering down the alley, leaning on the wall for support. His priority was to find a contact to hand over the wand. Hiding behind a crate, his breathing grew labored, each breath feeling like a tear through his lungs. The wound, a product of dark magic, was difficult to heal. Removing the dagger rashly could result in immediate death. As the footsteps of the search party faded, Gauss peeked from his hiding spot, driven by the thought of demanding triple the payment for his services. He made his way towards a branch of the Johnny Silverhand store, but Star and his team were already surveilling the area. Taking a painful breath, Gauss realized he couldn't risk apparition. The movement could fatally damage his heart. He had no choice but to proceed on foot, evading the search teams with the last of his strength. Unexpectedly, none of the Aurors he passed recognized him. Finally, reaching the connection point on a bridge, he leaned against the guardrail, his consciousness fading. A figure approached, and Gauss hoped it was his contact. "Are you okay?" the newcomer asked, his voice betraying his youth. Gauss, with a hint of irritation, replied, "Would you be okay with a dagger in your heart?" The man, taken aback, fell silent. Gauss, mustering his remaining strength, demanded, "Tell me, who do you serve?" "John Wick," the man answered. "Perfect," Gauss sighed, handing over his wand. "Tell my boss to increase my pay," he instructed, his voice weakening, "and inform him that I've hidden all the money in a house under Ferret Mountain." His voice trailed off. Half of the money was converted into Muggle currency and donated to. In the dimly lit room, the air was thick with tension. The message had been delivered. Half of the mysterious package was sent to the Zoli Welfare Institute, and the other half found its way to Norade, 78, Brown Scorpion Lane. Amy was the recipient. The messenger, gasping for breath, managed to convey one last piece of information. "Tell the boss, it's fun to be around." His voice trailed off into silence, leaving the connector staring at the wand in his hand, a mix of emotions swirling within him. "Is it worth it?" he pondered, the weight of the question heavy in the air. "To give your life for this?" Without waiting for an answer that would never come, the connector turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving the room and its secrets behind. Moments after his departure, Gauss, who had been feigning unconsciousness, opened his eyes. A shiver ran through his body as he forced himself to stand, despite the weakness that threatened to overwhelm him. He had no doubt now. The person who had just left was indeed the real connector. Clutching his wand tightly, he turned to face Star, who had silently appeared beside him. A single drop of blood, vibrant against the pale wood of Star's wand, seemed to pulsate with a life of its own, inching ever closer to Gauss. Despite the dire situation, Gauss couldn't help but laugh. "You'll never catch a wizard who cherishes peace and love," he declared, his voice tinged with a mix of defiance and resignation. Closing his eye, Gauss allowed himself a moment of reflection. The thought of retirement, once a distant dream, now seemed like a tangible reality. With a final look at the world he was about to leave behind, he let himself fall backward into the rushing river below. The water embraced him, cold and unyielding, as he surrendered to its depths. In that moment, the chaos of the world above seemed to fade away, leaving behind a tranquil silence that promised a new beginning. Or perhaps a peaceful end. Chapter 627, The Wick Family's Journey and the Secret Agent's Despondency. "He fell into the river," Star reported to Griffith, his voice carrying the weight of their recent operation. Griffith, with his hands clasped behind his back, approached Star with deliberate steps. His expression was stoic, his presence emanating a chilling aura that instinctively made one feel the urge to bow. Star, feeling the intensity of Griffith's gaze, respectfully lowered his head and continued. He was pierced by the bloody blade. It took the Auror office some time to notice the missing artifact. The culprit utilized dark magic to detonate the office. As Griffith drew nearer, his shadow enveloped Star, creating an imposing silhouette. Griffith then slowly raised his hand, placing it firmly on Star's shoulder, dissipating the tension in the air. "You've performed admirably, Star," Griffith commended with a rare smile, signaling a shift in the atmosphere. "It's through actions like these that we can demonstrate our resolve. The corruption in the capital is festering, and it's imperative they witness the true power of our conviction," Griffith whispered, his words like a secret pact between them. "Without clearing the remnants of the old, a new order cannot emerge. We're on the brink of creating a sanctuary for wizards, free from the shackles of traditional houses and the shadows of concealment." Star, feeling a surge of encouragement from Griffith's touch, looked up, his eyes ablaze with fervor. Griffith, turning his gaze towards a windmill painting on the wall, reflected on his past ambitions. "I once sought to elevate our world, to bring magic out of the shadows," he mused. "However, I've come to realize that strength dictates survival. The wizards of our envisioned future must be carefully selected." His smile turned contemplative as he added, "If we don't excise the rot, the infection will persist. There are those in power who paint me as a radical, a threat to the established order." Pausing before the windmill painting, Griffith's smile narrowed. "They err in fleeing from the injustices faced by our kind, and in failing to champion our rights. Yet, I harbor no resentment," he declared, shaking his head as he picked up a lion figurine from a nearby table. "The victor dictates the narrative. During my confinement in Nurmengard, I pondered this truth repeatedly," Griffith shared, holding the figurine aloft as if embodying a golden eagle in flight. "In the new world, my benevolence will be evident, and you, Star, will stand by my side as we usher in this era." Pausing, Griffith set the figurine down, his demeanor shifting as he chuckled. "But first, we must rouse our brethren." Star, wholly captivated by Griffith's vision, was prepared to sacrifice everything for this cause, believing fervently in their mission to forge a new world. Griffith's appearance transformed, his hair turning a stark white and his eyes adopting a sinister hue. Grindelwald, now fully revealed, smiled malevolently. "Let's show them our vision," he proposed. "Together, we will elevate magic, casting aside the shadows to step into the light." Meanwhile, in the turbulent river, Gauss was carried helplessly by the current until a hooded figure reached out, grasping Gauss by the collar and pulling him to safety. At 6 Privet Drive, Little Winging, Surrey, the early morning sun streamed through the window, casting a golden glow on the angelic face of a girl lying in bed. Her eyelashes, dusted with sunlight, fluttered gently, reminiscent of a serene doll. In the room, a little brown bear was meticulously packing, folding each piece of clothing with care to ensure no wrinkles marred the fabric before placing them in a suitcase. The bear paused, contemplating the wardrobe brimming with clothes. Its gaze then shifted to a pink bow-knot bear within the closet. After a moment of contemplation, the pink bear soared out of the closet, only to be caught by the brown bear, which proceeded to use it as a makeshift punching bag, demonstrating a peculiar form of packing assistance. Brown Bear meticulously attended to his tasks, selecting clothes from the closet and even packing some personal items that were too private to mention. He then pulled out a box from under the bed, carefully dusting it off with a soft handkerchief until it was spotless, before placing it in the suitcase and securely closing it. With the preparations complete, Little Bear clambered onto the headboard, gently nudging the angelic figure asleep on the bed with a soft wake-up call. Ariana, feeling the touch, instinctively reached out, pulling the bear into a tight embrace. Little Bear made a feeble attempt to wriggle free, casting a glance at the pink teddy bear that had been inadvertently knocked aside. Despite its unchanged expression, there seemed to be a hint of smugness about it. "Ariana, Dad is waiting for you downstairs," Mrs. Wick announced, knocking on the door. Receiving no response, she entered the room to find her daughter still asleep. Observing the packed items, she surmised Ariana must have been up late preparing. With a fond, helpless smile, she approached and gently coaxed her daughter awake. "Ariana, it's time to leave." Upon hearing her mother's voice, Ariana stirred, playfully batting her hands in Mrs. Wick's direction, before softly responding, "Mom, I'll be up in a moment." Wick couldn't help but reflect on the differences between raising a son and a daughter. Her son had been fiercely independent from a young age, often taking on responsibilities well beyond his years, leaving Mrs. Wick yearning for the tender moments of being needed. In contrast, Ariana fulfilled all her desires for maternal affection with her gentle, childlike demeanor. After affectionately kissing Ariana's forehead and reassuring her there was no rush, Mrs. Wick was abruptly called to action by her husband's booming voice from downstairs. "Ariana, dear, we're leaving." Confused by the lack of response to his earlier calls, Watson awaited his wife's descent with eagerness, inquiring about Ariana's readiness and reminding her of their flight schedule. Shortly after, Watson found himself waiting outside when he received a call from the airline informing him of the imminent departure of their booked flight. Watson's inquiry about chartering a private jet took the airline representative, secretly an agent, by surprise, leading to a swift change in their plans. Realizing Watson's intent to evade their surveillance by opting for a private jet at the last moment, the agents quickly adapted, disguising themselves as flight attendants at the airport. Meanwhile, on the flight originally booked by the Wicks, an elderly man observed the sudden departure of passengers around him, leaving him bewildered. When he sought answers, a flight attendant revealed her true identity as an agent before hastily departing, leaving the old man alone and puzzled. This sequence of events showcases the Wicks' unconventional approach to evading surveillance, highlighting their resourcefulness and the lengths to which they will go to protect their privacy. Alone on the desolate tarmac, Watson found himself lost in thought. He couldn't help but wonder if he had inadvertently chartered the entire flight. Meanwhile, a group of undercover agents had infiltrated the airport, each employing their own cunning methods to blend in, all in anticipation of Watson's arrival. Inside a car parked nearby, Ariana sat clutching a teddy bear, her eyes wide with curiosity. Beside her, a large gray owl named Kiki was reluctantly confined within a cage, a situation Watson had insisted upon. "Why on earth did you bring an owl?" Mrs. Wick inquired, her confusion evident as she navigated the car through the bustling airport traffic. "You wouldn't understand. It's about companionship," Watson replied, shaking his head with a smile. He reminisced about the previous Christmas when he and Kiki had only each other to rely on. "How could I forsake such a bond?" he mused aloud. Kiki, however, seemed less sentimental. "Don't be ridiculous. I was Ely planning to vacation in Dragon Valley," the owl retorted, clearly uninterested in Watson's notion of sympathy. "Change flights?" Mrs. Wick asked, still trying to grasp the situation. Despite her confusion, Watson's determination was clear, and she knew better than to argue. "Oh, an upgrade then," she concluded, albeit still puzzled. In the end, Watson decided against purchasing a private jet. Instead, the Wick family, including their unconventional pet, boarded a commercial plane, with their spirits high as they embarked on their journey. Back at the aircraft company, the agents who had been lying in wait were met with disappointment. No one showed up to purchase a plane. "Damn it, I didn't expect to be outmaneuvered," an older agent exclaimed, wiping the sweat from his brow. The realization that their target had seen through their ruse and evaded them was a bitter pill to swallow. "To think we're dealing with someone so cunning," he lamented, awed by Watson's ingenuity. Watson, unaware of the turmoil he had caused, casually remarked, "Buying an airplane isn't as simple as picking up groceries, you know." Meanwhile, the Wick family settled comfortably into the first-class cabin. Ariana, fascinated by the experience, pressed her face against the window, marveling at the clouds below. Mrs. Wick, enjoying a glass of champagne, turned to Watson and asked, "So where are we headed?" With a flick of his wrist, Watson released a golden snitch into the air, catching it effortlessly after a few inches. "Hungary, Budapest," he replied nonchalantly, his mind already on the adventures that awaited them. Chapter 628, Malfoy vs. Potter, a Quidditch Pitch Brawl. The Malfoy and Potter families had embarked on their separate vacations, leaving John to enjoy his time at Hogwarts. It was on the Quidditch pitch where traditional rivalries flared anew, showcasing the drama between Grease Malfoy III and Scarhead Potter. The Slytherins and Gryffindors found themselves at odds once again, this time over the scheduling of the Quidditch pitch during the holidays. However, mere arguments were insufficient, especially when Draco Malfoy was involved. His reputation for instigating conflicts was well known, and as such, these disputes often escalated quickly. On this particular occasion, the argument spiraled into a physical confrontation, with Harry Potter and Ron Weasley leading the Gryffindor charge against Malfoy. John found himself captivated by the spectacle of the trio battling Malfoy. "This is the third day in a row. They've clashed 3 times already," Daphne remarked, questioning whether their intent was to practice Quidditch or to engage in fisticuffs. Malfoy, with his agility, dodged Ron Weasley's punches with ease. Ron, tall and lanky, seemed a natural fit for a boxer, but he was no match for the seasoned Malfoy, who had grown significantly tougher over the years. Malfoy's movements were a blur, dodging and weaving, landing a solid punch to Ron's stomach that brought him to his knees. He then skillfully avoided a kick from Dean Thomas, countering with a swift elbow strike that left Dean in agony. The fight escalated as Malfoy launched into the air, delivering a kick to Harry's chest before grabbing him by the collar and slamming him down. Harry, however, managed to regain his footing, wrapping his arms around Malfoy's waist and attempting to overpower him. Malfoy, caught off guard, was momentarily pushed back but quickly regained control, tossing Harry aside. Standing up and wiping blood from his mouth, Malfoy taunted Harry, acknowledging his progress but deeming it insufficient. Harry, struggling to stand, was swiftly knocked down again by Malfoy's powerful punch. As Harry's glasses flew off, Malfoy arrogantly declared that Slytherin would be rewarded with an extra hour of training time. Ginny Weasley, outraged, challenged Malfoy, but her teammates restrained her, fearing Malfoy's lack of scruples. Despite her frustration, Ginny rushed to Harry's aid, inquiring about his well-being. Harry, ignoring Ginny's concern, fixed his gaze on Malfoy, vowing to stand his ground. Malfoy, smugly referencing Slytherin's consecutive victories, left with his team. Daphne, puzzled by the lack of punishment for the brawlers, questioned why they hadn't been disciplined. John explained that in the wizarding world, physical altercations without the use of magic were often overlooked, especially when it was a matter of pride for Gryffindor to admit defeat to a single opponent. John mused that Malfoy's penchant for brawling was unique to him. Had it been anyone else, Harry might have refrained from engaging. From their first day at Hogwarts, Harry and Malfoy were entwined by fate, each representing opposing forces within the wizarding world. Malfoy, with his provocations, and Harry, the boy who lived to defy the Dark Lord, continued their rivalry, a testament to their enduring conflict. In a world where the lines between light and darkness blur, The children of those who fought against Voldemort grew up under the watchful eyes of the wizarding community, each carrying the weight of their parents' legacies. Among them were Draco Malfoy, the son of one of the Dark Lord's followers, raised in luxury yet lacking the honor he craved, and Harry Potter, the celebrated savior of the wizarding world. Their meeting was a clash of opposites, a dance between darkness and light that neither could escape. John, observing from the sidelines, couldn't decipher Malfoy's complex feelings towards Harry. Was it hatred, or was it something more? He mused that if Harry had met Malfoy before Ron, their story might have unfolded differently. Despite Malfoy's arrogance in their first year, John noted with a hint of amusement that some things never change. The Hogwarts library and auditorium had become popular spots for students to complete their homework, and John found himself at the center of attention. Astoria Greengrass struggled with a potions assignment until John, ever the idle scholar, suggested adding some sleepy beans, a tip that sparked a realization in her. Suddenly, John was seen not just as a fellow student, but as a valuable resource, his knowledge sought after by many. Blaise Zabini approached John with questions about transfiguration and potions, revealing he had taken alchemy as an elective. Soon, students from Slytherin gathered around, eager for John's insights. His ability to provide answers with a mere glance made him a sought-after ally in their academic endeavors. This did not go unnoticed by students from other houses, who felt John's assistance should not be monopolized by Slytherin alone. Recognizing his unique position, John navigated the bombardment of questions with the ease of a supercomputer, his mental fortitude allowing him to sift through the chaos and offer precise answers. His efficiency and knowledge earned him admiration from Professor Slughorn, who saw the value in John's ability to teach, albeit overwhelmed by the sheer volume of inquiries. When Saturday arrived, John attended a party hosted by Slughorn, bringing with him a bottle of mead. His entrance was met with anticipation, as those present understood the significance of aligning themselves with someone of John's stature. The party was a gathering of the wizarding elite, each member keen on establishing a connection with John, who had founded the Silverhand Alliance and played a pivotal role in the Ancient Alliance. The Silverhand Alliance, a coalition of influential families, ministry officials, and celebrities, was a testament to John's ability to unite powerful interests. The Ancient Alliance, ostensibly led by the Malfoy family to restore the prestige of the sacred 28 pureblood families, was another facet of John's influence, representing his control over pureblood politics. As John navigated the party, it was clear that his presence was not just that of a student, but of a kingmaker, whose alliances and decisions could shape the future of the wizarding world. In the midst of planning for the future, a new name emerged for the two leagues, the Second Dynasty. The anticipation was palpable, with visions of a machinery sweeping across Britain, potentially elevating John to the position of Minister of Magic. It was a time of great potential, and the upcoming banquet hosted by Slughorn presented a rare opportunity for connection and networking. It was an opportunity no one wanted to miss. "I'm delighted you could make it," Slughorn said, his voice oozing with flattery as he accepted a glass of mead from John. With a gracious smile, John responded, "Reciprocity is the essence of courtesy." Aware of Slughorn's aspirations for the Merlin medal, John knew the importance of maintaining good relations. As the evening progressed, the focus of the banquet subtly shifted. John navigated the conversations with ease and elegance, ensuring he did not commit any social missteps. By the end of the event, it was clear that the gathering had been a resounding success, leaving the attendees thoroughly impressed. Following the banquet, John received a letter from the Ministry of Magic, informing him of the date he would be awarded the Order of Merlin. It became evident that Slughorn's intentions went beyond merely hosting a party. He was strategically repaying John. The guests were not mere acquaintances, but influential figures in their respective fields. Slughorn, understanding John's ambitions, had purposefully brought these individuals together for John's benefit. By winning their support, John stood to gain significantly, paving the way for his aspirations to unfold. Chapter 629, Slytherin vs. Gryffindor. The holiday passed quietly, leaving students who had diligently completed their homework in shock upon realizing classes would resume the next day. The halls echoed with the wails of younger students, while the upperclassmen had grown numb to the cycle. "I feel like the holiday season is just a ploy to get us to do our homework," Blaze groaned plaintively. With exam week looming, a sense of urgency enveloped the already tense atmosphere. Everyone was studying intensely, but Astoria seemed to take it to another level, often seen muttering under her breath while reviewing tactics. John watched Astoria with a mix of pity and concern. "I can already foresee the misery of the Slytherin team next year," he remarked. Astoria, destined to be the next captain, was already showing signs of becoming a more formidable leader than Malfoy, much to the dread of her teammates. Goyle and Crabbe, in particular, doubled their efforts, preferring the harsh conditions of Quidditch practice over Malfoy's extra lessons. As April waned, Daphne crafted a meticulous study plan, determined not to be outdone by her Hermione in the upcoming exams. The importance of the EWT exams was not lost on anyone, with future employment prospects hanging in the balance. The tension was palpable among the seventh years, who were now a common sight in the common room. Slughorn continued to scout for promising students for the Slug Club, while Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff delivered an exhilarating Quidditch match. The game, a close contest of tactics and resilience, lasted from morning until afternoon, ending with a Ravenclaw victory that left Hufflepuff players and fans alike filled with regret. The audience, however, was the true winner. Having witnessed a spectacular match that set high expectations for the final game of the season between Hogwarts' arch-rivals, Slytherin and Gryffindor. The question on everyone's mind was whether Slytherin would maintain its dominance or if Gryffindor could dethrone them, marking a new era of glory. Harry, in his final year, was determined to lead Gryffindor to victory. Since joining the Quidditch team, defeating Slytherin had felt like his personal mission. Despite previous failures, the rivalry between him and Malfoy only fueled their determination for the upcoming match, with the entire school eagerly awaiting the outcome. As time marched on, John delved into the mysteries of the Dark Divine Book at Stellaris. Having nearly mastered its contents, he found the book, a compilation of the wisdom of the nefarious Hierbo, to be incredibly enlightening, especially its detailed interpretations of time and the soul, two of the most taboo subjects in magic. In terms of curses, the book on various blood curses opened John's eyes. It was enlightening, especially when he found examples that made the concepts clear. "Let the body serve as a container to imprison time," John muttered as he slit his palms. He observed the scars on his palm visibly healing. This method was distinct from the time corridor, which involved going back in time to restore oneself to a pre-injury state. Instead, this technique accelerated the healing process, granting a near-immortal resilience. However, it was fraught with danger, as inattention could accelerate the body's aging by speeding up bodily functions to produce almost retrograde self-healing power. "The book is essentially about danger," John mused as he glanced at the Dark Divine Book, which also served as a Horcrux. The despicable soul of Hierbo was hidden inside, extremely weak. John would have destroyed the book along with the Horcrux it contained, if not for the potential ruin it could cause. "What should I do with you?" John pondered aloud, staring at the Dark God Book. He could sense the fear emanating from it. Hierbo's soul, a failure in its own right, had not understood his intentions and was obsessed with resurrection to become another Hierbo. The other soul was even weaker and more cowardly. A soul that has been split for too long, after re-entering different timelines, can it remain the same person? John questioned. Hierbo's soul had developed different ideas, essentially becoming independent personalities, diverging from Hierbo's original intention of correcting his flaws to achieve perfect eternal life. John extended his hand over the Dark God Book and declared coldly, "Serve me as Lord, or perish." Lines and circles symbolizing an unbreakable contract grew on the back of his hand. The power of the contract made the souls within the Dark Divine Book tremble. "I am willing to serve you as Lord," a weak and aged voice emerged from the book. The soul, fearing death, chose servitude over oblivion. The tree, symbolizing the irrevocable contract, imprinted its mark on the Dark Divine Book. Any thought of rebellion or disloyalty towards John would result in the book's instant destruction. John chuckled, "You've made the right choice," before putting the book away. He then picked up the little dragon that had been causing trouble under the table and set it aside. Checking his pocket watch, John murmured, "The game is about to begin," and left the Star Club. The little dragon, still focused on provoking the Protoss, failed to notice John's departure until the door closed behind him. "Attack!" a Protoss shouted, igniting a chaotic brawl on the table, which, in this context, was seen as an act of justice. Amidst the chaos, a Protoss transformed into a divine guard, ready to smash a chair down, but was promptly calmed by its peers. No, calm down," they urged, preventing further violence. The Protoss, scratching its head in confusion, reverted to its original form and joined the fray against the dragon. The little dragon seized the opportunity to escape the melee. Meanwhile, the highly anticipated traditional rivalry match between Slytherin and Gryffindor was about to commence in the auditorium. Malfoy taunted Harry with a thumbs up, followed by a throat-slitting gesture. Harry, undeterred, glared back fiercely. Ron, sensing Harry's rising anger, pressed on his shoulder and whispered, "Don't fall for it." Harry managed to contain his anger, bolstered by Hermione's encouragement and Lavender's shy support for Ron. Dean teased Ron, saying, "Your spring has come," leaving Ron dazed but secretly pleased. The air was crisp and invigorating as they made their way to the Quidditch pitch. Harry couldn't help but wear a mischievous grin, feeling the thrill of the upcoming game coursing through him. However, the atmosphere soured slightly as Goyle and Crabbe, ever the bullies, shoved the Gryffindor players aside with unnecessary force. It was in this moment of rising tension that Harry noticed Ginny's fists clenching, her eyes narrowing with a fierce determination that spoke volumes of her readiness to retaliate. Swiftly, he reached out, gently holding her back. "Don't let them get to you," he advised calmly, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions brewing within. "We'll show them our worth on the pitch, win or lose." Ginny's expression, though still seething with the desire to unleash a particularly nasty jinx on their adversaries, softened slightly at Harry's words. It was a testament to the bond they shared, one that went beyond mere words, a bond forged in the fires of countless challenges. As they continued their walk, Draco Malfoy, with his usual air of superiority, sauntered over, his sneer directed squarely at Harry. "Get ready to cry to your godfather, Potter," he taunted, his voice dripping with disdain. Harry felt his fist clench involuntarily, a surge of anger washing over him. Yet, he held his ground, refusing to let Malfoy's words get the better of him. He knew that the real battle lay ahead, on the Quidditch pitch, where skill and courage would speak louder than any taunt. The Gryffindor team, united by a common purpose, stepped onto the field with determination etched on their faces. They were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, their spirits unbroken, their resolve unwavering. The game was about to begin, and Harry knew that it was more than just a match. It was a test of their mettle, a chance to prove their worth, not just as players, but as individuals who could rise above pettiness and provocation. As the teams took their positions, the air was electric with anticipation. The crowd's cheers filled the stadium, a cacophony of support that fueled the players' adrenaline. Harry glanced at his teammates, a silent nod passing between them. It was time to let their actions speak for themselves. The game was on, and they were ready. Chapter 1630, The Final Battle, a Conclusion. In the Slytherin locker room, Draco Malfoy delivered what was expected to be his usual scathing pep talk. However, to the surprise of his team, he took a different tone this time. "I admit I've been particularly harsh these past few days," Malfoy began, acknowledging his own shortcomings for the first time. "In pursuit of my own ambitions, I subjected you to the most rigorous training imaginable, pushing you beyond what is typically expected of students." He looked around at his teammates, his expression sincere. "I want to take this moment to thank you all. Quidditch isn't a one-person sport. No matter how skilled a seeker might be, they're nothing without their team. And let's be honest, I'm not the strongest seeker out there," he continued, a hint of humility in his voice. "Harry Potter always seems to outmatch me, but it's the strength of our team that has led Slytherin to victory." The room fell silent, absorbing Malfoy's words. Crabbe broke the silence. If it weren't for your leadership, Draco, we wouldn't have developed our skills to this level. No, Malfoy sighed deeply. It's due to your hard work and dedication. You've pushed yourself harder than any of us, Gore added. You're always the first on the field and the last to leave. We know you've done it all for the team. Really? You all believe that? Malfoy asked, visibly moved by their support. The team members nodded firmly, with Gore affirming, We recognize your efforts, Captain. Regardless of today's outcome, you're the most successful captain in our eyes. All right, enough of that, Malfoy said, a sense of relief washing over him. Now get dressed. If I end up tied to the pillar of shame, I'm taking you all down with me. His attempt to return to his usual menacing demeanor was met with a mix of amusement and motivation among the team. This is our final match. Let's not disappoint each other, Malfoy declared with a wicked grin. Victory is our legacy, and we'll secure it by any means necessary. Meanwhile, in the Gryffindor locker room, Harry Potter was also giving his final pep talk. We just need to play our best in this last game, showcasing our true abilities, Harry encouraged his team. We've outplayed them before, and this time will be no different. We will win. For Gryffindor, he concluded, rallying his team with the promise of victory and the chance to become the new champions. The Gryffindor team, more mature and skilled than ever, responded with high spirits. With the best chaser and seeker among them, and Ron's exceptional performance as goalkeeper, they felt unbeatable. We have everything it takes to win. There's no reason we should lose to Slytherin, Harry declared, as calls for the teams to enter the field began. Taking a deep breath, Harry looked at his teammates and said firmly, Let's walk onto that field with no regrets. The Gryffindor players nodded earnestly, their morale boosted by Harry's words. As the teams made their entrance, the stadium erupted in cheers. The Gryffindor team, led by a determined Harry Potter, was the first to emerge. This was their final battle, a moment of destiny. Slytherin followed, with Draco Malfoy soaking in the cheers until a comment from the commentator, Ernie Macmillan, about Slytherin's rigorous training caught his attention. Malfoy shot Ernie a murderous glare, dismissing the accusation with a curt, nonsense. The tension was palpable as the captains of both teams shook hands, their grip firm. It was more than just a handshake. It was an acknowledgement of their long-standing rivalry and the culmination of their Hogwarts Quidditch careers. As Madame Hooch prepared to start the game, both teams were ready. This wasn't just another match. It was the final chapter in their storied rivalry, a battle for legacy and pride. Miss Hooch was momentarily at a loss for words before she instructed the two teams to take their positions. Game start, she announced. The seekers from both teams immediately ascended to search for the elusive golden snitch. Astoria Greengrass, mounted on her firebolt, seized the quaffle first and dashed toward the Gryffindor goalposts. Her grace in flight was undeniable. However, Ginny Weasley swiftly intervened, intercepting the quaffle with an impressive maneuver. The match's intensity was palpable from the start. Astoria initially secured the quaffle, but Ginny's unexpected interception turned the tide. Astoria quickly retaliated, aiming to reclaim possession. The two players clashed in midair, their competitive spirits on full display. Astoria regains control. No, wait, Ginny passes the quaffle to Dean Thomas. But what's this? A bludger has hit Dean, and the quaffle changes hands once again. The commentator, Ernie, could barely keep up with the fast-paced action. The match was a relentless tug-of-war. Harry Potter watched with pride as Ginny skillfully handled the quaffle, only to wince as the advantage slipped away. Goyle and Crabbe, Slytherin's bludger specialists, targeted Ginny, allowing Astoria to seize an opportunity. She executed a deceptive maneuver, fooling Ron Weasley and scoring for Slytherin. Slytherin takes the lead, Ernie announced, his voice strained with excitement. The competition was fiercer than ever, with both teams demonstrating exceptional skill and determination. Draco Malfoy couldn't help but boast about Astoria's performance, prompting a swift rebuttal from Harry. The rivalry between the two was as intense as the match itself. Ginny, undeterred, orchestrated a brilliant play with Dean Thomas, piercing through Slytherin's defenses. Incredible. Ginny's throw was nothing short of artistic, Ernie exclaimed, his enthusiasm echoed by Professor McGonagall's barely concealed delight. The stadium erupted in cheers, the atmosphere electric with anticipation. Among the spectators, John noticed Luna Lovegood, adorned with both Slytherin and Gryffindor colors, cheering for both teams in her unique fashion. This could very well be the most thrilling match in Hogwarts' century-long history, Ernie speculated, his voice booming through the microphone. Will Slytherin secure their 13th consecutive victory, or will Gryffindor dethrone them in this epic duel? The match was a testament to skill and strategy. Astoria's agility, Ginny's finesse, and the relentless bludger attacks from Goyle and Crabbe kept everyone on the edge of their seats. Ron Weasley stood firm as Gryffindor's last line of defense, ensuring the score remained close. Ultimately, the fate of the match rested on the capture of the Golden Snitch. The Seekers, representing their houses, scanned the skies with determination. "Potter," Malfoy taunted, "let's settle this." Harry responded with a confident smile. "I couldn't agree more." Years of rivalry culminated in this moment. They were no longer just students at Hogwarts. They were embodiments of their houses' legacies, determined to define their paths. Suddenly, the Golden Snitch appeared. Both Seekers launched into action, their history of confrontations fueling their determination. This was more than a game. It was the climax of their intertwined destinies. As Malfoy and Potter raced toward the Snitch, it was clear that this final battle would mark the end of their rivalry. Slytherin versus Gryffindor, Malfoy versus Potter, a conclusion to their saga awaited. Chapter 631, Chaser versus Chaser, Firebolts Clashing. In a breathtaking display of agility and rivalry, Malfoy and Potter, representing Slytherin and Gryffindor respectively, weaved and darted through the air. Their shoulders collided in a fierce competition, neither willing to yield an inch. This intense duel captured the attention of everyone watching. Descending from a great height, Malfoy attempted a risky maneuver, nearly elbowing Harry out of his path. However, Harry, familiar with Malfoy's tactics from years of competition, quickly adapted. He executed a central axis maneuver to position himself on Malfoy's right, effectively restraining Malfoy's dominant hand. It's often said that your greatest opponent knows you best, and in this case, it was undeniably true. "You're clever, Potter," Malfoy exclaimed with a laugh, acknowledging Harry's strategic move. Harry responded with a laugh of his own, but the moment of camaraderie was short-lived. As they raced under the Slytherin goal, Malfoy's gaze shifted to Goyle, who was poised to strike the bludger. With a malicious grin, Malfoy reminded Harry, "It's a pity you forgot. This is a team game." In the next moment, Goyle swung his bat with formidable strength, sending the bludger hurtling towards Harry. With a swift dodge, Harry narrowly avoided the bludger, but the maneuver threw off his flight path. Seizing the opportunity, Malfoy accelerated on his firebolt, transforming into a green blur as he pursued the Golden Snitch. The chase was exhilarating, with Malfoy and Harry darting from sky to ground and back again. Their brooms, both firebolts, seemed to be extensions of their bodies as they executed complex maneuvers. Harry, not to be outdone, adopted Malfoy's signature move, colliding with him in a bold attempt to gain the upper hand. The commentator, Ernie, could barely contain his excitement as he announced, "Harry Potter is hot on their heels, and they've both spotted the Snitch." The score was tied at 150 to 150, thanks to a powerful goal by Ginny Weasley. The tension was palpable, as everyone wondered who would ultimately capture the Snitch. In a dramatic turn of events, a bludger nearly collided with Malfoy's broom, causing him to lose sight of the Snitch. Harry, spotting the Snitch out of the corner of his eye, made a daring decision to execute a Wronski feint. He veered off in a completely different direction, successfully deceiving Malfoy and leading him away from the Snitch. Meanwhile, Ginny skillfully avoided a bludger and instructed Dean to score. Dean's powerful shot narrowly missed, but the Gryffindor team was determined to maximize their scoring opportunities during this critical moment. Astoria, recognizing the threat posed by Ginny, called for her team to block her. Despite the efforts of Slytherin's beaters, Ginny was relentless in her pursuit of victory. In a tense moment near the goal, Astoria attempted to deceive Ron with a feigned shot, but Ron, with a roar of determination, managed to deflect the quaffle, showcasing the fierce competition and unyielding spirit of both teams. Ron's triumphant smile was short-lived as he suddenly realized he had forgotten to hold onto his broomstick. His smile froze, and with his legs dangling in the air, the lifting force vanished, sending him plummeting towards the ground. The audience gasped in shock at his perilous fall. Frantically waving his arms, Ron's rapid descent was halted just in time by Dean, who swooped in to catch him. "Nice job, Ron," Dean exclaimed, praising him loudly before gently setting him down and remounting his broom. His spirit ignited, Dean declared. "You've shown me we have to win this game." Inspired by Ron's daring save, the Gryffindor team's determination flared. They played with renewed aggression, driven by a collective resolve to win. Ginny, witnessing her brother's dedication, pushed herself to new heights, her performance on the field tripling in intensity. She skillfully maneuvered her broomstick, breaking through the opposing team's defenses to score. With Dean and the third Chasers' seamless cooperation, they extended their lead by 30 points, eliciting cheers from the Gryffindor supporters. Astoria, recognizing the need to counter Gryffindor's momentum, knew that while Seekers could end the game, Chasers wrote the unfolding story with their teamwork. The score gap narrowed as the game progressed from morning into a gloomy afternoon, with a heavy rain threatening to further challenge the players. Exhaustion enveloped both teams as the score reached 150-70, with Slytherin trailing by 80 points, a seemingly insurmountable deficit for the team that had dominated with 12 consecutive victories. Could this be the day Slytherin's legendary streak was broken? Astoria and Ginny faced off, their eyes alight with an unyielding spirit. "Pass me the ball, and I'll break through Gryffindor's defenses," Astoria declared, signaling her readiness to unleash her full potential. Ron, buoyed by his earlier save, was determined to thwart her efforts. "Don't even think about it," he retorted, his clarity of thought and heightened reflexes making him a formidable guardian of the goal. The game intensified as both teams employed their most aggressive strategies, breaking through defenses and continually altering the score. Then, as if on cue, a thunderclap heralded the arrival of heavy rain, yet no spectator left their seat, all braving the downpour to witness the fierce competition. Above the tumultuous game, the hunt for the golden snitch added another layer of intensity. Malfoy and Harry, each determined to outmaneuver the other, disappeared into the clouds, their pursuit marked by occasional flashes of lightning. "I'll get it!" Harry shouted, to which Malfoy retorted, "No, you won't." Their rivalry was as fierce in the air as the teams on the ground. Meanwhile, Ginny and Dean's effective collaboration narrowed the points gap, while Astoria's efforts kept Slytherin in the chase. The score stood at 250-390, with Gryffindor needing to overcome a 140-point difference to win, a scenario reminiscent of past clashes but with the roles reversed. Emerging from the clouds, the competition on the ground and in the air reached a fever pitch, setting the stage for an unforgettable conclusion. The golden snitch vanished from sight, prompting an urgent search by the two seekers. Suddenly, it emerged from the clouds, darting downwards. The rain pelted their faces painfully, akin to being struck by stones. The scoreboard updated to 264-10, widening the gap to 150 points. Lightning illuminated the sky, narrowly missing Malfoy in its fierce descent. Keep going, Harry urged himself, his eyes locked on the elusive figure ahead. He was acutely aware that capturing the snitch was not just about the 210 points it would add to their score. It was about the hope it represented for his team. The match had turned into a test of endurance and willpower under the relentless downpour and the ominous rumble of thunder. Each seeker was driven by the determination to secure victory, knowing that the outcome hinged on their ability to withstand the elements and the pressure of the moment. As Harry pursued the golden snitch with renewed vigor, he could feel the weight of his team's expectations on his shoulders. It was a physical and mental challenge, pushing him to his limits. Yet, amidst the chaos of the storm and the intensity of the competition, Harry found a singular focus. The importance of this moment transcended the game. It was a testament to resilience, teamwork, and the unyielding spirit of those who dare to chase their dreams, even in the face of daunting obstacles. Chapter 632, The Showdown Under the Rain. Thunder roared and rain blurred the passage of time. Astoria, her windproof glasses cracked from the impact, could barely see through them. With a frustrated grunt, she ripped them off and tossed them aside. Her breaths came in heavy pants. She had been leading the offensive, pushing herself to the limit. Ron, on the other hand, had been a formidable barrier, deflecting every attempt at scoring with the exception of hers. Ginny, though visibly exhausted, managed to conserve some energy thanks to Ron and Dean's support. It was a pivotal moment, a clash of future captains sparking under the stormy sky. The score stood at 300 to 500, a gap of 200 points. Ginny, fueled by a fierce determination, found her path blocked by Astoria. Their brooms collided in a narrow pass, sending both girls tumbling from the sky. Amidst the chaos, the quaffle found its way through the goal. "Come on, Harry!" Ginny's voice cut through the rain, a beacon of hope amidst the storm. Lightning illuminated the scene, revealing a golden glimmer descending rapidly, accompanied by cheers and Ginny's rallying cry. Astoria, undeterred by the fall, shouted orders to her Slytherin teammates, urging them to seize the opportunity and score against Gryffindor. Harry, his eyes fixed on the snitch, barely registered Malfoy's voice beside him. "You know what, Potter?" Malfoy said, a mix of determination and joy evident in his tone. "I'm Malfoy. I'll do whatever it takes to win. This is who I am." With a daring grin, Malfoy changed his approach, kicking his broomstick forward in a bold leap. The snitch vanished from sight, and the firebolt spiraled out of control, heading for the ground. Malfoy's reckless dive stunned the onlookers, eliciting gasps and shouts of disbelief. Astoria made a valiant attempt to intervene, but a bludger sent her broom spinning out of control. "Is he insane?" Ron exclaimed, as the Slytherin team watched in horror. Malfoy's descent was rapid, but just before he could crash, a figure collided with him. Together, they managed to regain control of their brooms, landing awkwardly in the mud. They lay there, laughing heartily, a golden light shining in the darkness. "The match is over." Malfoy, holding the golden snitch aloft, wore a triumphant smile. It was a victory unlike any other, achieved in front of Harry Potter. Exhausted and drenched, he lay back, savoring the moment. "You won," Harry said, his voice tinged with complexity as he adjusted his rain-spattered glasses. "You always win." "No, Harry," Malfoy replied, sitting up and gazing at the snitch. "It's you who always wins." This victory marked Malfoy's first true triumph over Harry, a victory made all the more significant by Harry's selfless act of rescue. Malfoy extended his hand to Harry, who, after a moment's hesitation, accepted it with a relieved smile. "A wonderful game," Malfoy declared earnestly. "Yes, it was thrilling," Harry agreed, looking up at his teammates as they descended. This time, it wasn't Gryffindor who had lost, but Harry Potter himself. Yet, as applause filled the air, it was clear that the outcome mattered less than the spirit of the game. Ernie, tears in his eyes, proclaimed, "Slytherin won this match. It's an unprecedented victory." The applause wasn't just for the victors. It was a celebration of a match that would be remembered for its courage, sportsmanship, and the unforgettable showdown under the rain. The match was heralded as one for the history books at Hogwarts. Draco Malfoy's relentless determination versus Harry Potter's last-minute heroics, the announcer proclaimed, capturing the essence of what was described as the most thrilling duel to date. Ernie, overwhelmed by emotion, wasn't alone in his sentiments. Even Professor McGonagall found herself moved to tears, a testament to her love not for victory itself, but for the sheer excitement and emotional roller coaster the games provided. Snape, however, remained unimpressed, silently noting that despite the match's excitement, it wouldn't find its way into Hogwarts, a history. The scene that followed the match was one of unexpected camaraderie turned sour. As both players, exhausted and battered, made their way to shake hands, Malfoy's sudden sinister grin caught Harry off guard. In a swift motion, Malfoy's handshake turned into a forceful tug, sending Harry sprawling into the muddy ground. The crowd's cheers halted abruptly as Malfoy taunted, "The loser should always respect the winner." Harry, infuriated by Malfoy's betrayal, especially after saving him, decided to abandon any pretense of civility. What ensued was a fierce scuffle that had Ernie regretting his earlier sentiment, wishing he could take back his emotional investment. Yet, as the fight between Harry and Malfoy escalated, the crowd's enthusiasm reignited. Gryffindor supporters, previously disheartened by their house's loss, rallied behind Harry with fervor. The spectacle turned the Quidditch pitch into a scene reminiscent of a boxing match, with the entire school watching intently as the two rivals exchanged blows. Eventually, their respective house heads intervened, leading to both students being placed in confinement. Thus, the 7-year rivalry between Harry and Malfoy concluded in a manner that was both poignant and comical, with Malfoy keeping the golden snitch as a trophy of his victory over Potter. In the aftermath, the school was abuzz with tales of the match. Astoria and Ginny's rivalry seemed to intensify, while Ron, after an adrenaline-fueled performance, found himself recuperating in the hospital, covered in bruises he hadn't noticed during the game. Lavender's attentions provided some consolation, much to Hermione's disgust and Harry's amusement. Malfoy, basking in his perceived triumph over Harry, became insufferable, constantly boasting about his victory to anyone within earshot, much to the annoyance of his friends Goyle and Crabbe. As the school year drew to a close, students found solace and routine in their studies, except for John, who pursued his interest in alchemy. An unexpected delivery by his owl, Basil, brought a mysterious arrow instead of the requested soul potion, sparking curiosity and speculation about its origin and purpose. As John contemplated his next steps, he realized that overcoming his current limitations would require exploring new avenues for growth, a challenge he was ready to embrace as he glanced at the level 7 badge on his panel, signaling the beginning of a new chapter in his magical journey. A wisp of black, smoke-like substance weaved through his fingers. John gazed intently at it, murmuring under his breath, "Silence, darkness." To transcend his current limitations, he recognized the need for a more formidable force. Possessing magical prowess that stood at the apex of the pyramid, he sought a breakthrough, an endeavor akin to journeying from the nadir back to the zenith. The substance silently converged into his palm, and with a decisive motion, John crushed it. The resultant explosion sent shockwaves throughout Quangxingshe, causing several of the Protoss to stagger. Reflecting on the event, John mused, "The power of darkness." A fleeting glimmer of black energy sparked in his eyes, evoking memories of the boundless darkness from that enigmatic magical dimension. It was there, he knew, that he could shatter his current impasse. However, the likelihood of returning to that realm seemed infinitesimally small. "In addition to magic, I need to harness other forms of power," he concluded, his gaze lifting to the star-filled sky that spanned the dome above. His fingers gently caressed the ring he wore, a symbol of his quest for power, beyond the realms of conventional magic. Chapter 633, The Dark Medium and the Onset of Energy Exams. The energy exams were set to begin in the first week of June. In the preceding fortnight, John had scarcely ventured out of the Star Club, embodying the eerie tales circulated by the Slytherins. They whispered of a nocturnal specter, a night devil who emerged only under the cloak of darkness. A tale was told of a young wizard who, daring to defy Filch's curfew, encountered John in a dimly lit corridor. The unexpected sight of John was enough to send the young wizard into a faint, thereby cementing John's reputation as the Night Devil. John, however, remained oblivious to the source of these rumors. After all, his nocturnal wanderings were for mundane reasons, such as taking a shower, yet they were sensationalized into ghostly encounters. After drying his damp hair, John returned to the Star Society, his mind preoccupied with a singular thought. There must be a medium through which energy from other realms can be harnessed, he mused, eyeing his golden scales. He had recently basked in the moonlight of Dragon Valley, allowing the power of the stars to seep into his being. Yet, it was insufficient. John craved more power to achieve a breakthrough, but the nature of Level 8 remained a mystery to him. Dumbledore was perhaps the only person he knew who might be close to that level, but John quickly dismissed the thought of seeking his help. A challenging duel could potentially unlock my strength, John considered. However, finding a worthy opponent was a dilemma. Dumbledore was a possibility, but he was unlikely to engage lightly. The idea of coercing Harry crossed his mind, but was quickly dismissed. Grindelwald was another potential adversary, though rumors of his demise made this uncertain. In his 7 years in the magical world, John had encountered only a handful of individuals who could match his prowess: Dumbledore, Voldemort, Grindelwald, and his mentor, Nicholas Flamel. Flamel, with 6 centuries of magical knowledge, was undoubtedly powerful. Merlin's status was ambiguous, as John had never witnessed him in action. Another potential source of power was Heimdall, the ancient silver dragon from the dragon farm. Despite its age and diminished prophetic abilities, the dragon remained a formidable being. However, as its king, John was reluctant to exploit his subject. Our search must extend to other forces, John concluded, turning his thoughts to stars and darkness. The former was within his grasp, but the latter's potential from another dimension intrigued him. The challenge was bridging the gap between worlds to tap into this power. Magic power is universal, John pondered. Perhaps it can be harnessed in some manner. He resolved to conduct experiments and tasked Hagrid with procuring items of a dark nature. Hagrid, though puzzled by the request, trusted John's intentions. With a week remaining until the exams, Hagrid delivered the items. To magizoologists, these creatures were neither good nor bad, merely beings that could be misused by malevolent wizards. Among the items was a bicorn reverse scale, a rarity. Bicorns, dark creatures antithetical to unicorns, were shrouded in legend, associated with immorality and impurity. John marveled at the scale's properties, hard and fire-resistant, akin to dragonhide. He wondered where Hagrid had sourced it, given the bicorn's absence from Britain. John's quest for power was driven by a desire to explore the unknown, to push the boundaries of magic. As he delved into the dark medium, he was unaware of the path it would carve, not just for him, but for the magical world at large. After acquiring the necessary materials, John embarked on an ambitious experiment. His goal was to create a medium capable of harnessing energy from other dimensions. He consulted the Dark God Book, discovering that curses were a form of dark energy. After days of meticulous work, John inscribed ancient Elvish script onto the reverse scale of a bicorn. Wearing it as a talisman, he journeyed to a secluded island where the only sounds were the stars twinkling above and the rhythmic crashing of the ocean waves. The profound silence seemed to envelop everything. John stood solemnly, the Dark God Book levitating before him as the light around him began to fade. The dormant energy within him surged forth, greedily absorbing the surrounding darkness. The ancient inscriptions on the talisman gradually vanished, and the scale itself darkened, warping the space around it like a black hole. Raising his right hand, John watched as it turned gray, dark tendrils snaking into his skin through the talisman. He delved deeper, allowing a black thread to take root. Suddenly, John's eyes snapped open, his skin a pallid gray, his pupils now vertical slits of darkness. Black lines crept up his body from his right hand. "Get back!" he commanded. The lines halted, and the magical energy within him devoured the absorbed darkness. Moments later, John's complexion returned to normal. He sighed deeply, a slight increase in his magical power evident, though modest. The talisman reverted to its original state. "It seems to have worked," John remarked, a sense of accomplishment in his voice. The darkness had been consumed without causing him any harm, a feat only possible due to his unique nature as an entity formed from darkness itself. Emboldened by his progress, John transformed into a golden dragon, basking in the starlight. The stars seemed to bend towards him, though the vast distances meant that their power was diminished by the time it reached him. Had anyone been present, they would have been utterly bewildered by the sight. Meanwhile, at Hogwarts, the pressure of exam week was palpable. Miss Pince maintained strict order in the library, even resorting to chasing Crabbe with a broom for snoring. The seventh-year students were deep in preparation for their Newt exams, with the Ministry of Magic overseeing the process. Malfoy excelled in Transfiguration, Daphne in defense against the dark arts, and Neville continued to improve his potion skills. The entire school was abuzz with activity. During an interview regarding his recent Order of Merlin award, John was asked about the possibility of curing the werewolf curse, akin to the blood curse. He responded with a smile, explaining that werewolves, much like vampires, have been integrated into the magical world thanks to the wolfsbane potion, which mitigates their ferocity. He subtly indicated that werewolves, when properly managed, posed no threat and could live indistinguishably from non-afflicted individuals, except during the full moon. This nuanced view suggested that the magical community had learned to coexist with such beings, despite their differences. In a world where encounters with werewolves during the full moon might soon become commonplace, John's journey took him back to Hogwarts, accompanied by Slughorn. Along the way, they encountered familiar faces, including Giselda Marchban, the venerable invigilator who had once overseen Dumbledore's examinations. Marchban's eyes lit up upon seeing John, her voice rich with admiration. "You are the most talented wizard I've ever encountered," she exclaimed. "I eagerly await the opportunity to witness your exceptional magic once more during the upcoming exam." John, ever humble, merely smiled and assured her, "There will indeed be an opportunity." Marchban's spirits soared at his response. In her hands, she metaphorically held the legacies of three monumental figures, Albus Dumbledore, Tom Riddle, and now John Wick. This trio symbolized the transition across three distinct eras, with John positioned as the latest, and perhaps final, torchbearer in Marchban's illustrious career. Despite the magical world's penchant for longevity, Marchban was undeniably nearing the twilight of her years. Before parting ways, Marchban couldn't resist poking fun at an old memory involving Slughorn's Transfiguration exam, during which he had nearly botched his performance. The anecdote brought a mix of laughter and groans, with Slughorn begrudgingly joining in the mirth, despite his embarrassment. Upon their return to Hogwarts, time seemed to accelerate, swiftly carrying them towards the eve of the examination. The anticipation was palpable, with only one day left before the test that would once again showcase the extraordinary talents of John Wick and his peers. The air was thick with a sense of impending challenge, but also with the promise of greatness yet to be unveiled. Chapter 634, Gathering of Stars. The exam begins. The day before the exam, relaxation is often more beneficial than last-minute cramming. By the Black Lake, John observed the tentacles that had emerged, sprinkling them with a golden liquor that was eagerly absorbed, not a single drop wasted. Soon after, the tentacles retreated back into the depths of the Black Lake. Turning his attention away from the lake, John noticed two figures racing along its shore. One of them, mounted on a plank tethered by a rope, shouted jubilantly, "Come on, little dragon! I'm a dragon knight, oh! Overtake him, barbarian!" Malfoy and Neville, each pulling a suit of armor, were engaged in a spirited race. This was their second lap, and Neville's pace was as steady as a mountain, his breathing barely altered. Malfoy, on the other hand, was visibly struggling, his armor screaming eerily as it flailed a branch about. The challenge had been Malfoy's idea, likely spurred by a previous victory over Harry. However, by the third lap, Malfoy's frustration was palpable, and by the 10th, his legs trembled with exhaustion. Neville, only slightly winded, claimed victory with an air of undeniable superiority. "It's the armor's fault. It took something to increase its weight," Malfoy accused, seeking an excuse for his defeat. Neville merely glanced at the branch, its newfound strength a mystery even to itself. "Shall we go again?" Neville offered, ready for another round. Malfoy scoffed, "If it weren't for my need to pick up Addo." Neville's silent stare spoke volumes, as if to say, "As if you're the only one with a girlfriend." John intervened, his tone light. "Don't worry, we'll all be gathering at the Star Club later." His message was clear. There was no need for excuses. It was time to go. Malfoy, feeling guilty yet defiant, retorted, "Forget it, lest I be accused of being unbeatable." Even the armor couldn't resist commenting, "You truly have no shame," earning itself a swift kick from Malfoy. John decided not to dwell on Malfoy's antics with the armor. Today was about their Star Club gathering, a final get-together before the exams. At the Star Club, the atmosphere was a mix of anticipation and nostalgia. Heinrich impatiently motioned for Kim to sit aside, while Fleur frowned thoughtfully. Cedric, reflecting on his own graduation, remarked, "You're about to graduate." Having traveled extensively after his own graduation, he now seemed to embrace the life of an explorer. Percy, smiling at Fleur, inquired, "Planning to work in England? How about the Ministry of Magic?" Fleur sighed. "My family expects me to join the French Ministry of Magic, and Roland won't stop pursuing me." Percy mentioned Bill, noting, "He's still single, hasn't moved on." Fleur, the silver-haired beauty reminiscent of a French hibiscus, hesitated. "Maybe I still have feelings for Bill. I'm not sure." Their relationship had been strong, potentially leading to marriage if not for Mrs. Weasley's intervention. Fleur's pride, however, prevented her from compromising. Understanding the delicacy of the situation, Percy didn't press further. Matters of the heart required Bill's initiative. Changing the subject, Percy retrieved a bottle of wine, sharing it with the group as he casually announced, "I'm getting married." "Who's getting married?" Malfoy entered arrogantly, catching everyone off guard. Percy, unfazed, revealed, "Penelo and I. She joined the Muggle Mediation Committee after graduation." John, with a chuckle, congratulated, "That's wonderful news. Penelope Clearwater, if I recall correctly, is quite the intellect." The conversation shifted, leaving Malfoy's earlier bravado a distant memory. The gathering, a blend of celebration and reflection, marked a poignant moment for the Star Club members as they stood on the threshold of new beginnings. "Malfoy, I thought you'd prefer a pureblood," Malfoy remarked as he took a seat next to Astoria. Percy glanced at him, his expression stern. "I don't use marriage as a tool for negotiation," he replied firmly. Malfoy shrugged, a smirk playing on his lips. "My father mentioned you're quite the catch among the purebloods," he said. Penelo, a half-blood witch, took her seat, completing the assembly of the Quinxing Club members. John looked around, his gaze landing on Heinrich. "After a series of twists and turns, we've finally reunited," he said, his voice tinged with emotion. "Like stars in the sky, even when we're apart, we can still see each other's light," Fleur added, smiling at John. The members of the club each reacted in their own way. Heinrich with his devout dedication, Kim turning to listen, Percy maintaining his serious demeanor, Cedric with a hearty smile, Daphne gazing intently at John, Neville filled with emotion, Malfoy with a grimace, and Astoria, the ever-serious student. "As we gather for the last time, let's bid farewell," John began, raising his glass. "Some of us will teach at Hogwarts, others will seek thrills on the Quidditch field, adventure in the forests, compete in the political arena, or make a name for themselves abroad. Yet, like stars in the sky, no matter how our paths diverge, we will remain connected," he continued, his voice full of emotion. "The Star Club will shine brightly in the magical world, under the banner of the stars." "Parting is not the end," John said, smiling at the familiar faces around him. "Remember, the Star Club will always exist in its own unique way. In times of need, danger, or joy, don't forget all that we've shared." "Cheers," they all echoed, raising their glasses in unison. The party was a celebration of their shared experiences and future aspirations. Fleur shared stories of Gabriel's annual letters, Cedric recounted his adventures to Neville, Percy and King discussed political shifts, and Malfoy's attempt to woo Astoria was humorously thwarted. Daphne, with a blush, sought Fleur's advice on love, while Heinrich, seated next to John, proposed a toast. "To the past, the future, and the present," John said with a chuckle. "Welcome back." "I've missed a lot," Heinrich admitted, looking down. "I hope I haven't disappointed you," John said, touching his nose. "I believe I've still got it." "Always," Heinrich replied, his eyes brightening. "Your light reaches every corner, dispelling darkness and bringing hope." John placed his hand over his heart, his smile sincere. "I am honored to be your leader." Meanwhile, the Protoss observed the creators' banquet from afar. 11 of them sat in a row, each mirroring the members of the Star Society in their own unique way. They were like the shadows of the club, perhaps waiting for their moment long after the original members had departed. These shadows, too, were destined to shine brightly in the magical world, leaving a legacy as dazzling as the stars. The party wound down at 11 o'clock, with an exam looming the next day. Only Malfoy lingered, challenging Neville to a rematch, only to be soundly defeated 3 times before retreating. The next day, examiners from the Ministry of Magic arrived at Hogwarts, marking the beginning of a new chapter for the members of the Star Club and the magical world at large. "I'm sorry, but I can't provide assistance with that request." Chapter 635, Exam and the Researcher Association. The process for the 5th grade OWL exam seemed almost theatrical. Unlike previous years, the practical portion was scheduled for the morning, followed by the written exam in the afternoon. The first subject of the day was charms. By morning, the Great Hall had been transformed. The 4 long house tables usually seen were replaced with individual desks and chairs for the examinees. Outside in the foyer, Malfoy was seen cheering on Astoria. "You've got this," he said with a wave of his hand, his tone dripping with arrogance. "It's just an exam. My Astoria will ace it with ease." Astoria, however, seemed less confident. Her face was pale as she walked into the Great Hall, seemingly in a daze, perhaps not fully registering Malfoy's words. In a side room adjacent to the hall, several examiners were already gathered, awaiting the students. "Hannah Abbott," one called out. If John was considered the king of Hogwarts, then Hannah was its iron hat, always the first to be called upon. For someone who struggled under pressure, hearing her name felt like a death sentence. Yet, with Neville's encouragement, she mustered the courage to enter. John and Malfoy were among those waiting their turn, each student's schedule differing due to the variety of subjects being tested. John, however, was unique in that he was scheduled to appear in every subject's examination room. When it was finally Malfoy's turn, he sauntered into the room with a pace so leisurely it bordered on disrespectful. The examiners took special note of him, recognizing the young man who had been awarded the Medal of Valor and a Merlin Medal. "Hogwarts is truly vibrant this year," Marchban commented loudly to an older colleague. "Far more so than in our days." "What's that? The hot cat's here?" The older examiner, whose hearing was not what it used to be, asked. He was a venerable figure, decades older than Marchban, and had only appeared because this year's exams were notably lively. Malfoy approached the elderly examiner with his usual arrogance. "If you have any questions, just ask," he said, placing his hands on his hips. "What, Tim's here?" the old man replied, confused. "I don't know any Tim. I meant ask your question," Malfoy clarified, growing frustrated. "Time to leave? I'm the examiner here," the old man retorted, misunderstanding again. Malfoy's patience snapped. "Old man, just ask your question," he demanded. The examiner, now equally angry, slammed his hand on the table. "Who are you calling old? If you're not going to take this seriously, get out." Despite the misunderstanding, Malfoy's entrance had been anything but quiet. John, waiting his turn, could hear the commotion from outside. Malfoy was eventually escorted out, still arguing with the examiner. "You're hard of hearing. What kind of examiner are you?" he shouted, among other insults. John could only shake his head in disbelief. Was this really the atmosphere for a charms exam? When John entered, the mood shifted. The old man who had argued with Malfoy approached him with enthusiasm, navigating around the desks to greet him. "John Wick," he said, his eyes shining. "My name is Robin Spencers. It's a pleasure to meet you." "I've heard about your innovative approach to magic," Spencers continued. "It's quite refreshing." "Hello," John replied, shaking his hand. "These exams can be so mundane. Let's make it interesting," Spencers suggested, his passion for charms evident. It was clear that if not for John Wick's reputation, Spencers would have preferred the comfort of his home. John pondered for a moment before asking, "Are bonus points on the table?" "Of course," Spencers replied, his hearing impairment not dampening his enthusiasm, "provided your performance is satisfactory." "Then I'll take you up on that offer," John said, with a slight smile. With a gentle press of his hand, John unleashed a wave of magical energy. The desks in the room remained unchanged at first glance. However, when one of the examiners accidentally touched a desk, it crumbled into dust, as if it had been subjected to thousands of years of weathering. John then drew his wand, and the dust gathered before him, quickly reforming into something new under his skilled manipulation. Reorganized 2 meters away, the table returned to its original appearance with a flourish. "Pretty!" Spencer couldn't help but exclaim. A silver light flashed behind John, and the table had seamlessly returned to its original position. "How did you do that?" Spencer asked, bewildered. He hadn't even seen John use any magic. It was as if everything had materialized out of thin air. John merely smiled, his silence enigmatic. "There's something truly amazing about you geniuses," Spencer remarked, acknowledging that perhaps he was prying too much. He then smiled and asked, "After graduation, do you plan to compile magic books? Some old friends and I have formed a research association. I hope you might be interested," Spencer revealed, surprising the examiners with his proposition. The Association of Drillers was a group few had heard of, yet its impact on the magical world was profound. They were responsible for codifying spells, studying their effects, and enhancing their capabilities. Essentially, they were the weapon research department of the magical world, dedicated to the creation of magic. Entry was exclusive, reserved for those with the ability to innovate in magic. Its members were seasoned wizards, masters of various magical disciplines. "Sorry, I don't think I have any plans for this at the moment," John declined politely. Spencer wasn't offended. He simply smiled and said, "You are always welcome." It was clear to the examiners that Spencer had recognized John's creative potential. Given his performance in the Charms exam, an excellent grade was almost guaranteed. Exiting the examination room, John overheard Malfoy boasting about Spencer's praise. By noon, Astoria was seeking confirmation from John about an exam detail, much to Malfoy's indignation. "Why don't you ask me? My spell also received an O," he protested. Astoria, unsure of how to respond, simply stated, "I think it's more reassuring to ask John." Daphne couldn't help but sneer. Malfoy had been flaunting his achievement for quite some time. In the afternoon, the examination setting changed. Professor Flitwick explicitly banned cheating aids such as self-correcting ink and memory balls, making a point to patrol past the notably less academically inclined Goyle and Crabbe. It was a wonder how these two had managed to pass the OWL exam. Professor Flitwick, approaching John, mentioned Spencer's invitation to join the Association of Drillers, acknowledging it as a prestigious opportunity. John, however, expressed his lack of interest. "My mind isn't there yet," he said nonchalantly. "Maybe when I retire, that could be a good option." Professor Flitwick nodded in understanding. For John, the written Charms exam was straightforward. After half an hour, his mind began to wander. The reverse scale charm he wore provided him with a surge of dark energy. Observing his fingers turn a slight gray before quickly reverting to normal, John mused, "This energy consumes the human body." Despite absorbing a significant amount of dark energy, his palm remained unchanged. "The last time, in the dark dimension, the endless darkness that flooded into my body caused no side effects, proving this force cannot harm me." As time ticked away, John continued to harness the darkness. When the hourglass on Professor Flitwick's desk ran out, the exam concluded. Professor Flitwick collected the parchments with a wave of his wand, and the students' expressions varied widely. Goyle appeared confused, Malfoy confident, and Daphne was cautiously reflective. The next day brought the Transfiguration exam. Among those seeking John's assistance, Malfoy had joined Astoria, finding practical tasks far simpler than theoretical ones. By Tuesday, the exams continued, with Hannah being the first to finish. This time, however, a camel unexpectedly dashed out of the examination room, followed by a herd, leading to a chaotic yet lively scene as Hannah struggled to contain her tears. Inside the examination room, the tables had turned for Draco Malfoy. His usual air of arrogance was nowhere to be seen. Metamorphosis, a subject that had always been his Achilles' heel, seemed to have humbled him. Upon entering the room, he carried his usual swagger, but the person who emerged was markedly different. Judging by his subdued demeanor, it was safe to assume that his performance was merely passable at best. Chapter 636, The Examiner's Dilemma and Graduation Season. In the midst of the graduation season, the Transfiguration exams were conducted by the March classes. John stood amidst the examination hall, surveying his surroundings with a sigh. Extra points? His comment left the examiners in a somewhat awkward position. To them, evaluating someone who was rumored to have faced the Dark Lord and emerged victorious made their questions seem trivial. It was as if they were better off letting him showcase his skills freely. John stretched his neck, and to the amazement of those present, a tail sprouted from his back, while 2 dragon horns emerged from his forehead. "This is a human body transformation," he announced. The examiner's interest was immediately piqued. Human transfiguration was known to be the most challenging category, requiring not just skill, but also the bravery to experiment on one's own body. This is quite different from the animagus transformation. It somewhat resembles Dakuwaja, one examiner noted, showcasing their extensive knowledge. Dakuwaja was a rare form of metamorphosis, a notable instance being when Crumb transformed his head into that of a shark's during an underwater rescue in the Triwizard Tournament. However, Dakuwaja typically involved turning into a shark, whereas John demonstrated the ability to change specific parts of his body at will. The examiners, well versed in the art of transfiguration, knew that the Vagatis were proficient in this field, with many capable of transforming into various animals, including wild creatures like elephants and lions. Yet none had displayed the half-human, half-animal transformation that John had just performed. Surrounded by a crowd of intrigued scholars, one examiner reached out to touch John's tail, only to be swiftly slapped away, nearly breaking his hand in the process. Barring any unforeseen circumstances in the final course, John was on track to achieve excellence. In the afternoon came the thesis examination. Professor McGonagall, a leading figure in Transfiguration in the UK, patrolled the room. When she reached John, she paused to review his paper and found it flawless. She fought the urge to engage in a scholarly discussion with him right there, and instead turned her sharp gaze towards Goyle, who seemed on the verge of eating his pen. By Tuesday, the exams concluded. Malfoy, having lost half of his soul, struggled with Transfiguration. In contrast, Daphne exuded confidence, and Neville appeared somewhat hesitant, aware that Transfiguration was not his forte. However, he knew his moment would come soon. Wednesday brought the herbal medicine exam. For John, an alchemist, this was akin to being handed free points. Neville also excelled, impressing Professor Sprout enough to consider offering him a position after the exam. Defense against the dark arts was Thursday's challenge. During the dissertation exam, Sirius could barely contain his pride, almost announcing to everyone how well his godson had performed. The runic exam on Friday turned the examination room into a hub of learning the moment John entered. Professor Babbling was so eager to assist him that she offered him tea and water. Despite never attending a class, John had mastered even Professor Babbling's textbooks. Accusations of cheating were laughable in this context. The following week, during the potions exam, John casually suggested to the examiner, add 3 drops of Banshee tears to it, and it will enhance the hypnotic effect. The examiner had a moment of realization and hurriedly took notes, leaving the other examinees bewildered. They had hoped that being near John might ease their own exams, but instead, they found themselves blocked by the examiner's enthusiasm. If the examiner had known what the student was thinking, he would have laughed. After all, they were in the presence of a legend. A 2-time recipient of the first-class Merlin Medal, a legendary potion master who had contributed to the development of the Wolfsbane potion, solved the Blood Curse and Bloodborne curse, and invented the Ruby potion. When it came time for the dissertation exam on the Wolfsbane potion, Snape glanced between the topic and its creator, John, who sat before him. The implication was clear. Whatever John wrote would be considered the standard answer, given his unparalleled expertise in the subject. In the quiet examination room dedicated to the care of magical creatures, only John, Hagrid, and an examiner remained, enveloped in an awkward silence. John broke the silence with a puzzled question directed at Hagrid. "Just me, then? How am I supposed to take the exam?" Hagrid, after a moment's hesitation, suggested, "Shall we go and deal with the moss at the giant's feet?" He was referring to their mutual friend, the giant named Grop, who often accompanied a magical creature known as Zowu to the lake. "He's been having some stomach issues lately. Probably ate something disagreeable," Hagrid added, concern lacing his voice as they walked and talked. This exam, arguably, was turning out to be the easiest John had ever encountered, with the examiner practically fading into the background, becoming a mere observer to their conversation. The schedule for the exams was peculiar, with one astronomy exam set for the afternoon and another in the evening. During the morning's divination exam, John found himself bemused by the sight of examiners queuing up for him to perform divinations, as if he were a seasoned fortune-teller. Next on his schedule was arithmancy, a subject that, unlike astronomy, where students were tasked with mundane observations of satellites and constellations like Centaurus, offered little to discuss. The final days of exams covered history of magic, Muggle studies, and alchemy, with alchemy scheduled last. Upon John's arrival at the alchemy exam, he was met with an unusual sight. More examiners than students, all seemingly on edge, awaiting his participation. The question posed was straightforward. Who is the largest supplier of alchemy products in the wizarding world? The answer, Silverhand, led to a follow-up question about the identity of Silverhand's proprietor, to which John confidently wrote, John Wick. John Wick, renowned for his contributions to the series and the transformation of Azkaban, had significantly reduced casualties for the Ministry of Magic and revolutionized Azkaban's magical containment methods. His reputation was such that no one dared question his authority or expertise, save for his late teacher, who had once held that privilege. In the wizarding world, John was revered not only as a formidable figure, but also as the foremost alchemist. As John surveyed the room, his gaze fell upon employees of the Silver Hand Alchemy Workshop among the examiners. Their presence underscored the workshop's esteemed reputation, rendering them more than qualified to serve as examiners. When one of the employees awkwardly remarked on the improbability of anyone daring to question Silverhand's authority, John, with a shrug, accepted this as a bonus, albeit with a hint of resignation. He found himself in the peculiar position of lecturing the examiners while his peers completed their test papers. With the conclusion of the final exam, the days leading up to their departure from Hogwarts were numbered. The third week of June marked the end of their journey, with the train ride home looming on the horizon. The seventh-year students, among them Neville and Malfoy, reflected on the swift passage of time, with Neville expressing nostalgia and Malfoy, ever protective, warning younger students to steer clear of his sister, Astoria. As they navigated the corridors, filled with the echoes of Peeves' mischievous laughter and the startled reactions of students, John found himself outside the auditorium, lost in a moment of reflection. He could almost see his younger self sitting there, the sorting hat declaring him a Slytherin, a memory that brought a smile to his face. Neville's reminiscence of past conflicts, including John's altercation with Draco and the latter's subsequent embarrassment, sparked a mix of emotions. Despite their diverse backgrounds, a Muggle-born Slytherin, a pureblood Malfoy, and a timid Gryffindor like Neville, they had forged an unlikely friendship. Their journey together was a testament to the unpredictable and wondrous nature of fate, binding them in ways they could never have anticipated. In a twist of fate that defied the rigid traditions of Hogwarts, John, a Muggle-born, ascended to the esteemed title of King of Slytherin. This unprecedented rise was paralleled by an equally surprising friendship between Draco Malfoy, a pureblood, and Neville Longbottom, whom Malfoy had once tormented. This unlikely trio formed a bond that would reshape their destinies and the very fabric of the wizarding world. Draco Malfoy, shedding the prejudices of his lineage, embraced friendships with Muggles and stood by Neville Longbottom, who transformed from a timid boy into the courageous hero who vanquished Voldemort. Neville's bravery not only earned him a Hufflepuff girlfriend, but also restored his family's honor. Together, the three friends embarked on daring adventures, their actions weaving a new tapestry of unity and strength within the magical community. Under their influence, the Longbottom family regained its former glory, the Malfoy name rose to prominence as the first of the ancient families, and John, the Muggle-born, was hailed as the King of Hogwarts and eventually the second king of the wizarding world. One day, Neville shared news of his future plans. "Professor Sprout suggested that I study abroad for a year," he said. "The knowledge I can gain from practical experience far exceeds what the school offers." She recommended Albania for its rich diversity of magical creatures and plants. John nodded in agreement. "Albania is an excellent choice. Professor Sprout's advice is sound." Malfoy, ever the competitor, added with a hint of disdain, "The Puddlemere United have extended an invitation to me. I'll become the most valuable seeker in the Quidditch League." Puddlemere United, the oldest team in the league, had recognized Malfoy's talent, a significant achievement, especially considering that his father, Lucius, had never been part of this prestigious team. John chuckled, his eyes twinkling with pride and anticipation. "That's fantastic news." The future loomed large and uncertain before them, but one thing was clear: the magical world would never be the same. It was time for it to brace itself for the arrival of John Wick, a name that would soon become legend. Together, these three friends stood at the precipice of change, ready to challenge the old ways and forge a new path for wizards and muggles alike. The bonds they had formed, born of adversity and strengthened by loyalty, promised a future where anything was possible. Chapter 6 and 37, A Gift for Hogwarts. John made his way to the headmaster's office. With the academic year at Hogwarts drawing to a close, a final dinner was being prepared. At this hour, Slughorn was absent, but John was accustomed to his sporadic presence. Approaching the stone statue, he uttered, "Norwegian long-haired monster." The statue obligingly moved aside, allowing John entry. Upon opening the door to the headmaster's office, he was greeted by the familiar sight of the sword of Gryffindor, resting undisturbed. However, John's interest lay elsewhere. He approached the Sorting Hat with a purpose in mind. "It's you, John Wick," the Sorting Hat greeted, its voice tinged with recognition. "You've been a topic of conversation here for the past 2 years." "I want to try again, Sorting Hat," John stated, lifting the hat, which was adorned with cobwebs. He admired the craftsmanship of a spider's web on it, wondering about the time it took to weave such a masterpiece before placing the hat on his head. "You never change, John Wick," the Sorting Hat remarked. "Slytherin ambition, Gryffindor bravery, Hufflepuff loyalty. You've experienced much, and even your dean has spoken of you." The Sorting Hat, privy to the secrets of the headmaster's office, continued, "But none know you as well as I. You belong in Slytherin, the house that suits you best." John removed the hat, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Slytherin?" he mused. "Would Gryffindor not have been a different path?" The Sorting Hat countered, "No matter the house, you forge your own path." John reflected on his interactions with the founders. Gryffindor praised my bravery. Ravenclaw recognized my wisdom. Hufflepuff empathized with my trials. Yet, it's still Slytherin, he concluded with a laugh. Perhaps Salazar Slytherin is beyond reach, or maybe he simply doesn't acknowledge me. "You are one of the most remarkable wizards I've encountered," the Sorting Hat exclaimed. "Salazar has long since left Hogwarts." "Perhaps," John replied, his tone non-committal. Despite recognition from the other houses, he had never felt validated by Slytherin himself. As a member of Slytherin without Salazar's explicit approval, he felt a sense of incompleteness. Turning his attention to the sword of Gryffindor, John observed it quietly. The sword trembled slightly under his gaze. "The sword of Gryffindor," he whispered, reaching out to touch it. The sword, which only true Gryffindors could wield, did not resist his touch. "Did you reveal yourself because of Harry, or for me?" John pondered. Once he had longed for a weapon as formidable as the sword of Gryffindor, but now he possessed the sword of Silver Wick. Feeling the sword's desire to break free, John smiled gently. "No. You can't come with me. You belong to Hogwarts." He caressed the blade softly, adding, "Wait here for someone truly worthy of you." The sword ceased its movement, and John, with a satisfied smile, declared, "Gryffindor was a gift to me, and now I return you to Hogwarts." He chose not to take the sword, content with his own. Before leaving, John paused by the Sorting Hat once more. Drawing his wand, he aimed it at the hat, which protested in alarm. "No, no, my 1,000-year patina." Ignoring its cries, John cleaned the hat with a spell. "This shall be my second gift to Hogwarts," he stated, pleased with his work. The Sorting Hat, now spotless, lamented, "I'm clean, but I don't feel like myself anymore." As John exited the headmaster's office, Slughorn later returned to find the Sorting Hat in an unusually pristine condition. Initially suspecting a replacement, he was reassured only when the hat spoke. "My God, you finally took a shower," Slughorn exclaimed, recalling how the hat's cleanliness had once been a subject of debate among students. Despite considering it a tradition, Slughorn had long wished for the hat to be cleaned, a wish that John had now fulfilled. After deciding against taking a bath, Slughorn admired the now clean Sorting Hat, finding it quite pleasing to the eye. Meanwhile, John had performed an act that would have earned him the applause of the entire Hogwarts. Yet, he chose to remain humble and left without a word. In the days following the exams, the atmosphere in Slytherin was relaxed. Malfoy and Astoria were seen together, discussing with a hint of jest whether Astoria would find a new boyfriend after Malfoy's departure. This led to an amusing scene where Malfoy found himself the center of attention in front of a large mirror, with a group of mermaids pointing and laughing at him. Daphne appeared relieved, proud that her sister had finally taught Malfoy a lesson. Blaise, puzzled by the dynamics of their relationship, wondered aloud why Astoria hadn't broken up with Malfoy yet, especially given his current predicament. Astoria, for her part, eyed her wand with suspicion, puzzled by how effortlessly she had cast the spell on Malfoy. Was it because the spell was directed at Malfoy that it worked so smoothly? Malfoy himself was silent, feeling that something was deeply amiss. Outside, Tom the cat bid farewell to Crookshanks in the courtyard, showing that their owners' relationships hadn't affected their friendship. Hermione, upon seeing this, simply watched them with a smile, not wanting to interrupt the moment. In the skies above, a chase unfolded as Basil, a swift bird, targeted a snowy owl perched on Gryffindor Tower. This led to a chaotic duel, with feathers flying everywhere inside one of the bedrooms, causing an uproar among the students. Ron's owl, Pigwidgeon, cowered in a corner, hoping to avoid the fray. Harry and Ron attempted to intervene but were too late to catch Basil, who escaped with a few snowy owl feathers in its beak. As feathers drifted into the hallway, curious students chased after them, leading to a comical incident where one student ran headfirst into Neville, who was exiting Professor Sprout's office. Apologizing, Neville helped the student up, just as Hannah Abbott approached, playfully twirling a feather. The two shared a shy smile and walked down the corridor together, greeted cheerfully by Luna, who was carrying an armful of fruit. Luna, in her usual whimsical manner, called out to Mr. Corner below, releasing the fruit to the horned, snoring beast waiting on the first floor. Ginny, demonstrating her Quidditch skills, managed to feed the creature an apple, greeting Luna in the process. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Winky was busy preparing for the end-of-term dinner. Dobby offered to help, but Winky, still adjusting to the idea of receiving a salary, insisted she could manage on her own. Their conversation was interrupted when a potato rolled off the table, causing a minor commotion among the house elves. This series of interconnected vignettes from Hogwarts showcases the lighter moments of life at the school, highlighting the friendships, rivalries, and everyday adventures that make the magical world so rich and vibrant. The kitchen at Hogwarts was bustling with activity, the air filled with the aroma of various magical and mundane dishes being prepared. Amidst this culinary chaos, a peculiar event was unfolding. Potatoes, peeled and cleaned to perfection, were making an unusual journey. Neither too large to cause a blockage, nor too small to be ignored, these potatoes were being funneled down the drain, navigating through the intricate plumbing of the ancient castle. Their journey was a curious one, taking them through the hidden veins of Hogwarts, away from the warmth of the kitchen and into the cooler, shadowy depths below. The potatoes traveled in silence, save for the occasional splash and echo as they moved through the pipes. This peculiar procession continued until they reached their final destination, the Chamber of Secrets. In this chamber, long associated with the darker aspects of Slytherin's legacy, a door creaked open. The sound echoed off the ancient stone walls, filled with the history and secrets of centuries. The chamber, usually shrouded in mystery and fear, was about to become the unlikely landing spot for these kitchen castaways. As the last of the potatoes made its descent from the pipe and landed with a soft thud on the damp floor of the Chamber of Secrets, the door swung open wider, as if welcoming these unusual visitors. The chamber, with its eerie greenish glow and the imposing statue of Salazar Slytherin, seemed to watch in silent anticipation of what was to come. This unexpected intrusion of the mundane into a place of such potent magical history was a stark contrast. Yet, in the magical world of Hogwarts, where the extraordinary was part of everyday life, even a potato's journey could lead to unexpected adventures and revelations. The Chamber of Secrets, once a place of dark plots and dangerous creatures, was now the stage for a new, albeit small, mystery. What would become of these potatoes, and how would their arrival in such a place affect the intricate tapestry of life at Hogwarts? Only time would tell. Chapter 638, Slytherin, Because I Am Proud. John re-entered the Chamber of Secrets of Slytherin, a place that, among the secret chambers of Hogwarts' 4 founders, was perhaps the most infamous. Unlike the adventurous spirit of Gryffindor, the elusive wisdom of Ravenclaw, or the midnight service of Hufflepuff, Slytherin's chamber broke all conventional expectations from the outset. It was a realm filled with terrifying legends, a sanctuary for those of pure blood, and home to a fearsome basilisk and magic that was tinged with darkness. Among the legacies of the founders, the Chamber of Secrets stood out as a stark anomaly, devoid of the benign consciousness that seemed to permeate the others. As John stepped inside once more, a wave of emotion washed over him. This was the battleground where he had once faced the basilisk and where he had delved into the depths of soul magic. Before the Star Society had come into the picture, This chamber had served as John's clandestine base, known only to him and Harry Potter. It was here that they had experimented with all manners of forbidden magic. Approaching the massive statue that dominated the chamber, John was reminded that darkness was a constant theme in this underground lair. Although his eyes were capable of piercing the gloom, he opted to conjure a ball of light, which he let float above him, casting a soft glow over the surroundings. The chamber was divided into 3 levels: a studio on the first floor, an office on the second, and a restricted area on the third. John made his way to the second floor, where he reached out to touch a piece of silverware adorned with a skull. The long box that should have contained the Slytherin wand lay empty before him. Now, with a different perspective, John examined the skull-shaped silverware more closely. It was an alchemical object, reminiscent of a pensieve, inscribed with magic and the ancient words, "Glory and light are indispensable." Dismissing it as unremarkable, he tossed it aside and ascended to the 3rd floor. The books stored here were perhaps the best preserved artifacts in the chamber. The previous heir, Voldemort, had plundered the chamber of its treasures, but these books remained. John, with a casual wave of his hand, summoned a book from the shelf. To him, the once obscure contents now seemed as clear as day. His mastery of magic had grown to the point where he could rival, if not surpass, Slytherin himself. As he flipped through the pages, several more books levitated from their places and floated towards him. Returning to the 2nd floor, John ignited one of the books, its thick smoke filling the air. He then lifted the skull's silverware, which began to inhale the smoke through its open mouth. Green flames flickered to life within its eye sockets, casting an eerie light around the room. In the glow of the green light, an apparition appeared. A figure seated, engrossed in a book and taking notes. The surroundings seemed to rejuvenate, with collapsed shelves mending themselves and golden candlesticks illuminating the space. John observed the figure closely and murmured, "Salazar Slytherin." It was merely an image, not the man himself. The skull had projected a scene from the past, depicting Slytherin as a figure straight out of a dark fairy tale. However, this representation of Slytherin was not as aged as one might expect. His beard was still black. Slytherin's research, as John discovered, was rather mundane. The image continued to write until it eventually faded away. John inserted several other books into the skull, hoping to glean more insights. Like John, Slytherin was deeply engrossed in his research and experiments, often remaining secluded for days on end. John chuckled to himself, comparing his appearance to the hairless image of Slytherin. "Will I also lose my hair as I age?" he wondered, half-jokingly concerned about the prospect of baldness. After the last book's image vanished, John shook his head in resignation. It seems he truly is absent. He had hoped to use the images to somehow end Slytherin's presence, but it appeared that such an outcome was not to be. In other words, the consciousness of Salazar Slytherin remained elusive, leaving John to ponder the mysteries of the chamber alone. The 4 giants of Hogwarts, renowned for their mastery of magic, had vanished first. It was a moment of embarrassment and reflection. "Well, whether you're here or not," John spoke aloud in the deserted Chamber of Secrets, setting aside the skull he had been holding. "As a Slytherin, it's my duty to acknowledge the lessons I've learned here. This secret chamber has been instrumental in my growth." He gestured into the void, his voice resonating through the ancient walls. "I'm departing now, leaving behind the school that has been my home." He paused, a wry smile on his face. "I never claimed the title of Slytherin's heir, but as its king, I owe a farewell to the great Salazar Slytherin, the founder of our house." "Glory to Slytherin," John chuckled, his voice echoing with a mix of pride and ambition. "Slytherin seek glory, achieve it, and protect it. Great Salazar Slytherin, be proud. In your house, John Wick has risen." His declaration filled the chamber, a testament to the boldness and pride that defined him as a true Slytherin. As the echoes faded to silence, John, with a sense of relief and accomplishment, made his way out of the statue and followed the dark passage leading out of the chamber. Suddenly, he halted, hearing his name whispered in the shadows. "John Wick." A deep breath escaped him, a look of realization dawning on his face. "I've overlooked something crucial." Turning slowly, he faced the statue of Salazar Slytherin, which had its mouth open as if to speak. "I didn't examine this chamber closely enough," John admitted. It dawned on him that a wizard of Salazar Slytherin's caliber would have left a part of himself within the chamber. Like Gryffindor's great wooden sword, Ravenclaw's painting, and Hufflepuff's recipe, each founder had a unique way of preserving their consciousness. Salazar Slytherin had chosen this statue for his. "I've been watching you," the statue spoke, its voice deep and resonant. John, unfazed, replied, "Surely, the great Salazar Slytherin wouldn't reveal himself just because of my words. If so, that would be disappointingly petty." Salazar Slytherin's voice filled the chamber. "I've observed your growth, your pursuit of magic, your dedication to family and friends. I've seen your struggles, your innovations in magic, and your courage to explore the forbidden. You've impressed me deeply, more so than anyone I've encountered." "Our founders imparted their wisdom to the Sorting Hat, making it the most impartial judge of character," Salazar continued. "You've been seeking an answer about yourself, and I'm here to provide it." John nodded, eager to hear the confirmation of his identity. "You embody the essence of Slytherin, not just in ambition, but in your actions and spirit. Slytherin will not just be proud of you, you elevate its legacy." John sensed the difficulty Salazar Slytherin faced in admitting this, given his notorious pride. "John Wick, you are a true Slytherin," Salazar finally declared, his voice carrying a weight of sincerity and recognition. John smiled, feeling a sense of validation. This acknowledgement from Salazar Slytherin himself was more than just an affirmation of his belonging. It was a recognition of his contributions and potential. Curiosity piqued, John inquired, "You've remained hidden all these years. Have you been contemplating my lineage?" He eyed the statue with a hint of suspicion. The founders had made appearances before, yet Salazar Slytherin had remained elusive. Salazar Slytherin, slightly embarrassed, admitted, "I've been observing, determining if you were worthy of this encounter." John couldn't help but suspect that Salazar's reluctance stemmed from a deeper conflict, perhaps related to his views on blood purity. After all, the original Slytherin had left Hogwarts after a fallout with Gryffindor, marking a historical moment of division. This encounter, however, marked a new chapter, one where John Wick, a modern Slytherin, bridged the past and the future, embodying the true spirit of his house. John and Salazar Slytherin, despite being from vastly different eras, found themselves in a moment of mutual understanding. The Chamber of Secrets, often thought to be a place of dark intentions, was, in this instance, more akin to a stage for a dramatic revelation rather than a battleground. With a smile that carried both respect and a hint of cunning, John offered a graceful bow. "Great Slytherin, your approval honors me. Remain here until the name John Wick resonates once more in your ears," the ancient wizard instructed, his voice echoing through the chamber. John lifted his gaze, his eyes alight with a fierce determination that seemed to capture the very essence of ambition itself. It was clear in that moment that Salazar Slytherin, despite any reservations he might have had, recognized in John a true successor. The imposing statue of Slytherin nodded slightly, a gesture filled with a profound sense of approval. "I will take pride in you, King of Slytherin," it declared. With Slytherin's blessing, John turned to leave the chamber. He was no longer just a visitor in this ancient world. He was a man with a purpose. As he stepped beyond the confines of the Chamber of Secrets, he carried with him the acknowledgement of one of the most formidable wizards of all time. John Wick was ready to make his mark on the magical world, not just within the walls of Hogwarts, but as a sovereign beyond the Ivory Tower. Chapter 639. The idea of staying in school. Leaving school dinner time at Hogwarts was always a bustling affair, with the kitchen alive with the sounds of cooking. The Hufflepuffs, having the advantage of proximity to the kitchens, were the first to emerge, eagerly sampling the various potato dishes prepared for the evening. This privilege of early access and the opportunity for late-night snacks was something they wouldn't trade for the world, not even for the comforts of Gryffindor Tower. One particularly gluttonous student even sneakily pocketed a dish for later. As they made their way down the corridor to the Great Hall, where all Hogwarts students gathered, conversations buzzed around them. Students from each house were openly discussing their holiday plans, while the seventh-year students pondered their futures beyond Hogwarts. Amidst these discussions, some expressed reluctance to leave, while others seemed eager to embrace the challenges that lay ahead. After witnessing Draco Malfoy's latest confrontation, John couldn't help but shake his head in disapproval. "Draco, you need to learn some restraint," he advised. "That temper of yours won't serve you well in the magical community." But Malfoy, ever the proud scion of the Malfoy family and a member of an ancient alliance, dismissed the advice with a haughty retort. "Restrain myself? They should learn not to cross me." He believed that the rules of Hogwarts were one thing, but in the wider world, status and power dictated one's actions. John found himself reluctantly agreeing with Malfoy's perspective. Within the school, everyone was more or less on equal footing, but outside, the societal hierarchy played a significant role. The dinner commenced with Professor Slughorn's simple yet enthusiastic call to eat. John appreciated this straightforward approach more and more. As he carved into a roast chicken with a skill that left even Malfoy impressed, he reflected on his time at Hogwarts. For 7 years, he had upheld the honor of Slytherin, his name now forever linked with the house's legacy. This final meal at Hogwarts was savored slowly by the 7th-year students, each lost in memories of the thrilling adventures they had experienced. They were perhaps not the most exemplary group of students, but their years at Hogwarts had been uniquely eventful. As they discussed their future plans, Malfoy aiming for a professional Quidditch career, Neville heading to the Albanian forest, and Daphne preparing to take over her family's business, they did so with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The uncertainty of the future loomed large, but the memories of their time at Hogwarts provided a source of strength and motivation. The dinner concluded at 8:30, symbolizing the end of their 7-year journey. Holding a half-finished glass of iced lemonade, John exchanged a silent toast with Professor Snape across the room. It was a moment of mutual respect, acknowledging the complex relationship they had shared over the years. Snape, for all his flaws, had been a figure of significance in John's life. Though not always the most supportive headmaster or the most engaging teacher, Snape had shown moments of understanding and advocacy for Slytherin students. John felt a pang of sympathy for the man, whose potential had been constrained by his unrequited love and loyalty to Hogwarts. As John looked around, he realized that his dreams and aspirations had evolved. What he once longed for was now behind him, and the future beckoned with new challenges and opportunities. The toast between him and Snape was not just an acknowledgement of their past, but a silent wish for the future, a future where both could find their own paths beyond the walls of Hogwarts. John found himself reflecting on the Sorting Hat's decisions with a mix of nostalgia and frustration. The friends he had made and the allies he had journeyed with seemed to be diverging onto their own paths. Harry was set on Auror training, Hermione aimed to join the Ministry of Magic, and Ron aspired to start a business akin to the twins. Meanwhile, Ginny and Luna were continuing their education at Hogwarts. It felt as though everything had changed, yet in some ways remained the same. The evening concluded with John's departure from the celebratory dinner. Malfoy and Daphne led the younger wizards back to their common rooms for the final time, while John made his way to the headmaster's office. Upon his arrival, Slughorn greeted him with a bottle of oak-aged mead, a precautionary sniff preceding his sip. "Ever since that poisoning incident, I've been unable to shake off this habit," he admitted. John, less cautious, accepted a glass and drank without hesitation. "This isn't the bottle I gave you," he observed. Slughorn chuckled heartily. "I'm saving your bottle for truly special occasions. The mead from the great Second King is not something to be taken lightly." John, amused, challenged, "I bet 3 galleons you'll end up drinking it on a whim." Slughorn's laughter filled the room, his appreciation for fine things making it a likely outcome. Yet he insisted it was a bet John would lose, emphasizing the respect he held for the gift. Their conversation shifted from casual banter to more serious matters, with Slughorn discussing the current state of the international magical community and the attention John's creation, the Silver Hand, had garnered. Slughorn warned of potential opposition due to John's rising influence, especially from countries like Germany, where political tensions were high. John, unfazed, saw these challenges as opportunities, suggesting perhaps he should consider a position at Hogwarts to continue influencing young minds. The idea wasn't entirely in jest. Hogwarts held a unique position in shaping the future of the magical world, a fact not lost on figures like Dumbledore and even Voldemort. Slughorn, however, doubted John's commitment to a teaching role, given his responsibilities and ambitions beyond the school. John acknowledged this, but expressed a desire to support his friends and Hogwarts in other ways, such as through donations from his foundation dedicated to aiding young wizards. This gesture of support was well received by Slughorn, who saw the value in John's contributions both as a benefactor and as a mentor to the next generation of wizards. Their meeting underscored a mutual respect and understanding, a partnership that transcended the typical student-teacher dynamic. It was a collaboration based on shared values and a commitment to the betterment of the magical community, a fitting conclusion to their time together at Hogwarts. The atmosphere was one of comfort and anticipation. Slughorn, ever eager to cement his legacy before retirement, was willing to embrace new opportunities as they arose. As dawn broke, signaling the end of another school year at Hogwarts, students began to stream out of the castle. Their luggage had already been dispatched to the train, showcasing the wizarding world's efficiency and ease compared to the more cumbersome Muggle methods. In the sky above, a striking contrast was painted by two owls, one black and the other white, as they glided gracefully. On the ground, Tom, with his tail wagging enthusiastically, followed John closely. Hagrid, with Fang by his side, approached John to bid him farewell. Not far behind, Grop, in his own clumsy way, also waved goodbye, adding to the heartfelt departure. Luna, accompanied by her horned Snorkack, passed by, offering John a gentle wave. "Goodbye, John," she said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of sadness and hope. The scene was a poignant reminder of the bonds formed within the walls of Hogwarts, a place where magic and friendship intertwined to create unforgettable memories. As the students departed, each carried with them the experiences and lessons that would shape their paths in the wizarding world. Chapter 640, The Mission Ends, Wong's Graduation. Notification: the final mission of the Hogwarts phase has been completed. Reward received, +1 to magical bloodline, +3 to any skill. The train rumbled and steamed away from Hogwarts. John gazed at the receding platform and silently bid farewell in his heart. Goodbye, Hogwarts. The journey led them to platform 9 3/4, where students disembarked and reunited with their families in warm embraces. Stepping off the train, John noticed Sirius and the three youngsters emerging from the adjacent carriage. Sirius, ever the devoted godfather, was visibly thrilled with Harry's aspiration to become an Auror, a dream once harbored by James. However, the tumultuous times had steered James towards joining the Order of the Phoenix instead. Sirius suggested a celebratory outing to Yinshao Amusement Park before returning to the ancestral Black residence, where father and son would reside together. An unexpected development was the evolving relationship between Harry and the Dursleys. Post-departure from their household, their interactions had softened, evidenced by the last Christmas gift from the Dursleys being a pair of socks rather than the usual trivial coins and tissues. Harry's maturity was reflected in his correspondence with the Dursleys, signaling a shift in their dynamics. Mr. Weasley arrived to collect his children, accompanied by Percy. It appeared that the father and son had reconciled after Mr. Weasley's period of reflection. Percy affectionately ruffled Ginny's hair, while Ron, accompanied by his fiancée Penello, an intellectual with a sophisticated demeanor, approached with a hint of awkwardness. Percy acknowledged John with a nod across the bustling crowd, which John returned before his attention was diverted. He observed the Malfoy family reunion. Mrs. Malfoy tenderly caressed her grown son, her eyes brimming with relief and emotion. Lucius, standing beside his wife, was grateful for having made the right decisions. Their respectful and grateful nod towards John did not go unnoticed. Mr. Greengrass, maintaining a distance from the Malfoys, exchanged a silent glance with them. Astoria ran into her father's embrace, while Daphne, more reserved, was warmly enveloped by Mrs. Greengrass, who doted on her eldest daughter. Old Mrs. Longbottom, eager to greet her grandson, instructed her son to clear the path. She was immensely proud of Neville, who had grown as brave as his father, earning him the moniker the Lion of House Longbottom from Outsiders. As John made his way out of the platform, he was greeted by his family. Watson, visibly anxious, scanned the surroundings until John was unexpectedly hugged by a blonde-haired little figure. Surprised, John gently patted Ariana's back. Mrs. Wick approached, her gaze softening at the sight of the harmonious siblings. Tom, feeling left out, voiced his discontent until Ariana affectionately touched his chin, causing his tail to wag energetically. "Let's go home," Mrs. Wick said, brushing a stray hair from John's face. John chuckled in response. "Yes, let's go home." Amidst the familial warmth, Watson's concern about being followed prompted a swift departure. As they settled into the car, with Watson behind the wheel, he recounted the chaotic events in Budapest. The intended peaceful stay had turned into a fiasco, complete with a high-speed chase and a minor behind the wheel. Watson described an encounter with a peculiar individual wielding a bow and arrow, likening him to a skilled performer. Despite the bizarre situation, Watson admitted to accidentally hitting the archer with his car, marveling at the individual's resilience. Why would someone chase an underage girl with a bow and arrow in broad daylight? Watson mused, only to be humorously chided by Mrs. Wick for his overreaction during the incident. John looked at his father in silence as Watson awkwardly attempted to justify his driving mishap. "Actually, it's a problem with the car. If I were driving a GTR, would I have hit it?" "If you drove a GTR, you'd already be in the hospital," John replied, his voice tinged with a mix of amusement and concern. His father always harbored an overconfident belief in his driving skills. Despite the occasional nagging, the journey home was filled with a familial warmth that John had missed. Upon their return, John planned to spend a few days at home, working on perfecting his magical abilities. Ariana, his sister, was eager to show him the paintings she had created during his absence. Her enthusiasm was a testament to her recovery, a process that John knew was crucial for her well-being. Ariana's newfound passion for drawing, likely influenced by Aberforth, had become a source of joy for her. "This is a painting of a square in Budapest, featuring a girl with red hair. She seems about my age," Ariana explained, a hint of pride in her voice. John's attention, however, was momentarily caught by the girl in the painting, prompting a puzzled reaction from Ariana. Mrs. Wick, observing the exchange with the wisdom of experience, chuckled softly. She understood that Ariana's initial disappointment stemmed from John's focus on the girl rather than her artwork. Yet Ariana persisted, pointing out the girl in the painting and naming her Natasha. "Natasha?" John echoed, turning to Mrs. Wick for clarification. Mrs. Wick, with a sip of her black tea, revealed, "That name is quite common where I come from. Your father saved that girl." The story unfolded as John recalled his father's tales of Budapest, where Watson had heroically saved Natasha from a dangerous situation. Ariana had met Natasha during their stay at the Grand Budapest Hotel, where the girl was being treated for injuries inflicted by Mrs. Wick. "We spent a month there, and Ariana became quite close to her," Mrs. Wick added. John smiled at Ariana, who was eagerly awaiting his approval. "It's amazing," he praised, genuinely impressed by her talent. "You're much more talented than I was at 14. Ariana's happiness was palpable, her joy infectious. The following day, John assessed Ariana's condition, noting significant improvement thanks to the soul potion and the aid of Ravenclaw's crown. Her stability was a relief, indicating that she could manage without the crown as long as her emotional state remained balanced. In the basement, John contemplated the use of a vial labeled Light and Darkness. Despite its potential benefits, he was wary of the risks, especially considering his current state and the possibility of adverse reactions. Ultimately, he decided against using it, prioritizing safety over uncertain gains. Meanwhile, in the living room, a humorous scene unfolded among the family's owls. Basil and Riddle observed as Kiki, the timid gray owl, attempted to navigate his surroundings. A sudden movement from Basil sent Kiki into a panic, resulting in a comical tumble. However, Basil's focus was on intercepting a letter from the Silver Hand branch, demonstrating his protective instincts and perhaps a hint of disdain for Kiki's skittishness. This light-hearted moment served as a reminder of the unique dynamics within John's magical and familial world. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Kiki found himself in an unfortunate predicament, perched precariously on the edge of a shelf. Despite his current form as a transparent owl, he couldn't shake off the feeling of being a fire dragon at heart. The room was filled with the ambient glow of the television, where Ariana was engrossed in her daily ritual of watching the classic cat and mouse chase. Nearby, Tom, a real-life cat, expressed his discontent by clawing at the rug. He couldn't understand why Ariana was so fascinated by the animated cat on the screen, especially when it shared his name. It's all so unfair, he thought, feeling overlooked and underappreciated. Meanwhile, John stepped into the room, breaking the evening's routine with a letter in hand. He opened it with a sense of gravity, his expression turning solemn as he read its contents. The atmosphere in the room shifted, as if the letter carried away to far beyond its physical presence.